everybody. Welcome to another episode here of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. And there's a lot to talk about this evening. A award for the quarterback, a very long injury report. It won't fit on my screen. It's so long that the Vikings put out, but I want to talk about which injuries you should have your eyes on for the Minnesota Vikings and which ones are probably not as big of a deal based on what we heard from Kevin O'Connell today. Also want to bring you some of O'Connell's comments, some of JJ McCarthy's comments, and of course your questions. And later on in the show, Robert Mays from The Athletic Football Show. And I asked Robert to play a game with me. It's either I think it's yeah, dog, or nah, man. So I gave him a bunch of statements. Some are a little bit aggressive, and he has to say yeah, dog, or nah, man, and answer him that way. So that's coming up a little bit later on the show. But I do want to start with JJ McCarthy, NFC Offensive Player of the Week in his first game. Don't ask about the first half of the game. It was the final result in the fourth quarter that mattered the most. And of course, naturally, I saw a lot of people talking about today, how can he deserve this? It was really just one quarter and all that sort of stuff. And there is a part that we have to acknowledge, that your team doesn't get extra points for NFC Player of the Week awards. So if other teams are unhappy that it wasn't their guy, and fans or media or whatever, there's no point system. You don't get a tiebreaker. I know it's complicated, the NFL's tiebreaker system, but you don't actually get tiebreaker points based on your NFC Offensive Player of the Week. So take it for what it is. And the fact that, look, the Vikings are on national TV again this week, and it's another way to put JJ McCarthy's name in the headlines. I don't even know how it's voted. Nobody asked me who the NFC Offensive Player of the Week is. I think it's decided by some folks in the NFL office, and they just say, this is the guy we're going to give it to. Now, here is the thing, though, that I noticed. So, of course, I was like, oh, I wonder who else was potentially deserving of this award. And I started going through the NFC, and I'm looking around, and I'm going, NFC, what the heck happened this week? If you had NFC players on your fantasy teams, you were not very happy. So I was just looking at, in terms of most passing yards for this week, Josh Allen, Geno Smith, Justin Herbert, Michael Penix had 298, Joe Flacco, Drake May, Brock Purdy, but he threw a couple of interceptions, Daniel Jones, Patrick Mahomes. That's a lot of AFC quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford had a very good game, 245 yards, and Jaden Daniels had a very good game, 233 yards. That's not a lot of special NFC quarterback performances. And then you go to touchdowns. Okay, Aaron Rodgers had 4. That's an AFC quarterback these days. Baker Mayfield had 3 touchdowns, but 167 total yards. Herbert, Jackson, Jordan Love only threw for 188 yards, which of course he didn't have to throw for a whole lot with the way their defense played. Kyler Murray, 2 touchdowns, but only 5.6 yards per attempt. Brock Purdy again. There just wasn't a lot of outstanding, shockingly good showings in the NFC. And I think Matthew Stafford was probably the best NFC quarterback this week. Jalen Hurts was 19 for 23, but only 152 yards. Stafford was the highest graded PFF quarterback. And when you go to wide receiver, even then, there wasn't a lot of great wide receiver performances. Puka Nacua, I think, has a really great case for this. 130 yards, 10 catches on 11 total targets. That probably would have been my choice. A receiver having that type of day, 130 yards is pretty good, not mind-blowing. And then CeeDee Lamb, 110 yards. And Ricky Pearsall, 108. And those are your 100-yard receivers. Bijan Robinson had 100 yards as a running back, but didn't really run all that effectively. And there's your offensive players. I mean, Donovan Jackson almost got this award, right? This is just not a week where there was a lot of guys on the offensive side that blew your mind with their performances. So you go, okay, I'm sure that they had the discussion of, well, McCarthy scored 3 touchdowns He ends up getting the game-winning drive, and it's an exciting moment for everybody. And viewership, I saw that email today. Viewership was up, et cetera, et cetera. And okay, he's Offensive Player of the Week. Yes, there is certainly a discussion. Oh, yeah, you're right. Jackson Smith-Njigba was in that conversation as well. And I think that those guys probably are more deserving because of the outstanding showings that they had, as opposed to it was a furious comeback and they find a way to win and they got some help from the Bears and it was very exciting and it's a great way to start a career. But I just think that this right here speaks to the NFC this year. When we just go through the NFC and start looking around and saying who's special, who is truly special, especially on the offensive side. Okay, I think Daniels is. And Jaden Daniels I watched the game. I thought he had a spectacular game. But they were just beating up the New York Giants, and there was no real reason for Jaden Daniels to do much more than he did, which was throw for 233 yards, got some rushing yards, and then they get up by 2 scores and the game is over because the Giants are playing Russell Wilson. But we know Jalen Hurts is an excellent quarterback. We know what he can do with that offense. And it looked like until the lightning delay, they were doing a lot of that offensively for the Eagles. Dak Prescott on tape had a very good game, but had a lot of drops. You're not going to give Offensive Player of the Week to somebody who had drops. Like, you got to have a stat line or a storyline or something there to go with him. So I don't think that by any means JJ McCarthy was the best quarterback in the NFC. I think that Stafford played better. Hurts and Prescott both played really well. Daniels played better. But after that, Jordan Love played really well. They got him ahead in the game. He did his job, but didn't have a big stat line, didn't have a lot of scores in that game. I thought if you're giving it to a quarterback with less than 200 yards, then people are going to say the same stuff. So maybe a wide receiver was more deserving this week. But to have JJ McCarthy go out and pull off a game-winning fourth quarter, down a couple of scores, lead a couple of touchdown drives, make some spectacular plays. That was the other thing too, is that all the touchdowns were highlight reel plays, which I don't know if that factors into the NFC Player of the Week award, but it certainly should, I guess, right? You're an entertainment product, national TV, who was fun, who made exciting plays. A 27-yard touchdown, the laser beam to Jefferson, and then the scramble. So sure, I don't know. If you're mad about that, then you're probably just mad about a lot of things. I know that Vikings fans, of course, aren't, but I just think that the people who instantly ran to their computers or tablets or iPads or iPhones to fire out into social media, how dare you, National Football League, they really just didn't look at what happened in the NFC. And that's the nature of the NFC this year. It's completely wide open, and I'm not sure that anyone is special. Philadelphia is the champions, and they deserve the benefit of the doubt. They didn't look quite as special offensively as they did last year. It's one game. They'll probably get it together, so they deserve to be up here. The Lions, who were the offensive kings last year, number 1 in the NFL, they got knocked off, and they're going to have to prove that they belong up there. Who else offensively in the NFC makes you go, oh man, you got to watch out for that team? There really isn't that many teams like that. The Packers, I think, will have a good offense, as they always do. I don't think it's going to run people out of the building. I think in Green Bay, what they're talking about is, hey, let's run and play defense and ask Jordan Love to hit 2 or 3 shots a game. I think they're going to be talking about it that way. And then Washington, they have a special quarterback. Do they have a special complete team? I think that they're closer than they were last year. They have the most potential for that. The Rams with Stafford have potential to be really good, but they scored, 14 points in that game against a really good defense. I think the Rams, with their weapons, could be really excellent. Who else scares you? San Francisco, Brock Purdy's hurt now, and they don't have Deebo Samuel, who looked like he could play. It's really Washington, right? Like, who's special in the NFC? It's Washington, and it's possibly LA, because Nakua is a top 5 wide receiver who just doesn't seem to be talked about a whole lot. Everything else was in the AFC. It's Lamar, it's Allen, it's Herbert, it's Aaron Rodgers, it's even Justin Fields over in the AFC. The NFC, it's going to be black and blue, I guess, this year. I guess we should get used to the type of game that we saw on Monday night with the Vikings and the Bears. There's just not a lot of offenses with a ton of firepower. And at the end of the year, would you be shocked if the NFC has 2 out of the top 10 offenses or 3 out of the top 10 offenses? I would not. And Stafford's got to stay healthy all year and play at a high level all year. And he's dealing with this back injury. So is he even going to be able to do that? Daniels is the one, and that offense with Samuel and Laramie Tunsil, that you go, okay, they've got some superstar talent. They've got, I think, the most gifted quarterback overall when you include processing, the most gifted quarterback in the NFC. And then after that, it's wide open, which leads me to the next part, which is the kind of take apart of the game. There's always 2 games to me. There's the game that I went to and that I covered and that I talked to everyone after the game and everything else and got everyone's reaction. And then there's the analysis part of the game where you go home and you watch the All 22 and you watch JT O'Sullivan's All 22 and you read the smart people who do football film and you try to come together with this complete what actually happened in this football game. And it was very, very interesting to look at this through a new light because so many things are happening at once in a live game. And for a lot of you guys who aren't at the game, it is so hard to see on television what's going on down the field. And they give you an instant replay that's right up here next to the guy who, fumbled the ball or not having something happen. It's very difficult to see until you slow a play down, watch it 2 or 3 times, and then you go, oh, now I get it. Now I see what happened. And after you do that, and I highly recommend JT O'Sullivan's QB School breakdown of JJ McCarthy. You're not going to find anybody doing it better than him. I promise you're not. JT, in fact, so many of the things that JT says will match up with things that KOC says. Just a small example, JT said in his breakdown that the Vikings' motion was off. Like they weren't timing it right. Guys will be going in motion and they're supposed to reach a certain landmark and the ball is supposed to be snapped and it wasn't happening, or it didn't on a couple of plays. KOC brought it up today. So this breakdown, I think, was excellent. JT is a former NFL quarterback, played for a bunch of teams, including the Vikings. I wrote a story on him 2 years ago about his kind of rise to being one of the top YouTube analysts. And the big takeaway from that for me was very similar to what Kevin O'Connell said today in his press conference, which was it's definitely not on the quarterback. And I know that sounds like something we said time and time again in the Kirk Cousins era, but this one was everybody different making a mistake on every play. That was those third downs and plays that didn't work out. Some of the run blocking early on was not what you'd want it to be. There is a play where they run something called mesh, which I'm sure a lot of you as big football fans understand, but I'll just explain it anyway, where you have 2 wide receivers coming from opposite sides and they run right by each other. And what they're supposed to do is run by each other, not into each other, which happened in a key down right in front of JJ McCarthy. And what O'Sullivan points out, it's a great observation, is that McCarthy, he goes to throw it, and then the 2 guys almost run into each other, and you go, well, I can't throw it now. And then he ends up kind of making a small sack out of the play. But where was he supposed to go with that football? What was he supposed to do differently? And the most fascinating part of the breakdown. So there's a bunch of examples of that. And there's examples where he points out that, hey, McCarthy's got to be faster on this. They got to have, the play clock is counting down. That was something O'Connell talked about today with the lights and the noise and everything else. It's harder than it is to simulate at home, basically, when you're going on the road to Soldier Field. But, so McCarthy is not like exonerated by the tape. I mean, there's definitely times where things are off for him running the operation. The most fascinating was the pick six, because all of us see a pick six on an outbreaking route and you go, man, you were late on it, or you telegraphed it, or whatever it was that you did wrong because that guy's running for a touchdown. And what JT O'Sullivan said was that was the right read on the play, and the throw was in basically the right location. And Nashawn Wright sold out completely to intercept that pass. And Nahshon Wright is also 6'4", and he probably doesn't get the ball if he's not 6'4", because he caught it way up above his head. And the point was, sometimes you do everything that you're supposed to do as a quarterback. They got the protection set up correctly. They threw to the read that they were supposed to throw to, one-on-one on the outside between Jefferson and Nahshon Wright. And the ball is in the general area. Maybe, in hindsight, you'd push it a few yards off. But essentially, Nahshon Wright, I don't know if he just knew the route that was coming based on being a Viking for a year, or if he just totally guessed and he ended up being right. And that's how he gets the pick six. And that's why it's great to have former quarterbacks and people who know the game at that level who have run those concepts to break them down, because as bad as it was result-wise, the process was exactly how KOC taught it. And then McCarthy goes over to the sideline and O'Connell tells him, you did the right thing there. Shake it off, get back out there, keep running our offense, and it's going to work out for you. So that was very, very interesting. And you come away thinking that the first half was everyone's fault. It was McCarthy, it was the protection and the left tackle problematic there. It was the play calling with some of the concepts were a little bit more. Mesh is something I just don't see the Vikings running a ton, but I think it was to try to get him a completion. Justin Jefferson running 4 yards on a 3rd and 5 is inconceivable. Like I would have never guessed that he would make such a basic mistake like that. That sounds like something that an undrafted free agent would do. And I think everybody was a little bit too amped up is kind of the takeaway. So that was my first question to Kevin O'Connell in today's press conference, was just his big takeaway from the first half.
Kevin, when you rewatched the first half, what was your kind of takeaway about why things weren't working and what you could build off of there?
Yeah, I thought there was some sloppiness to how we played, and what I mean by that is really, we talk about all 11 and how many snaps did we actually have all 11 guys just simply doing their job and doing the things that fundamentals and technique, schematically, things they were coached to do, and it was kind of moving around a little bit, and we just weren't on the field enough. We weren't able to sustain any sort of momentum to allow ourselves to stack some plays, and then luckily we were able to get the stop the defense did late in the first half. Murph made a great tackle, and they make the field goal, and then we get Speedy on a explosive to give Will a chance at it. And I thought those 3 points clearly ended up being pretty huge.
So there you go, Kevin O'Connell on the sloppiness of the offense in the first half. And JJ McCarthy, when he talked about going back through the tape, kind of talked about the same type of thing.
JJ, as you had a chance to go back and watch the film, what are your big takeaways from Monday night and how that helps you improve going forward?
Big takeaway is, just all the little fundamental things that, we kind of lean on is something that, isn't 100% there. So just being able to go back onto the practice field and keep, making those concrete habits. And, I feel like the way we adapted as an offense throughout the game when it wasn't going our way, in those first 3 quarters, and, being able to experience that and know what we have is something that was huge to take away from. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're definitely not even close to where we want to be as an offense. So it was a lot of things that we learned.
So I do think that when it comes to grading coaching staffs, how good are you at your job? Your ability to have a horrific first half where everybody is playing badly for the most part, and then come out in the fourth quarter with the game on the line and put together some really excellent drives and find a way to win the game and have nobody freak out, nobody lose their minds over on the sideline. That was why they won this game, because I think if they had seen any of your guys' social media posts and how much a lot of Vikings fans were freaking out at that moment, and not just Vikings fans, but media around the universe, it's one of those island games that everyone's watching. There was a huge freak out going on. And yet on the Vikings sideline, even after a pick six, it was calm. And I asked Aaron Jones about that today.
Kevin was talking about how important it was that the sideline was calm and in control, despite some of the chaos there early in the game. Just how important was that in your mind to have that be the atmosphere around JJ in his first start?
I think that was important. You never seen any guys get low or too high. It was even kill, even when things weren't going our way, and plays were being made in Chicago. Like the Chicago players are over there, kind of celebrating towards our sideline. You see the guys just stay even kill, and we just continue to communicate with each other that, hey, our time is coming. Let's take it one play at a time, deep breath. And once we make this one play, it's going to avalanche and it's going to start going, and it's a game of momentum. So we eventually got that momentum on our side, and we worked out.
It's crazy, how easy it is to say, well, you guys should just stay calm on the sideline. And then when you're in that building, and even us in press row are going, what is going on here? And everybody watching, what is going on here? To stay calm is harder than you think. And you've seen a lot of teams melt down over the years or not be teams that can fight their way back. And it is a staple of Kevin O'Connell's teams that you should never, as my friend Judd Zulgad did once, never leave the stadium early and never turn the TV off when this team is playing, because they're probably going to keep fighting the way that they did and JJ McCarthy did. I think that it's in McCarthy's nature, but I also think that it's in the nature of a veteran team. And that's why when in the offseason, I hear people talk about the Vikings and go, well, they're an old team. And it's like, okay, right. But when you have something like this happen and it's Hockenson and Jones and Brian O'Neill and Ryan Kelly, those guys aren't losing their minds. You're not having players freak out who have been through so much in the NFL before. And that matters around a young quarterback. I think it makes a very big deal for JJ McCarthy to have a coach who doesn't lose it and to have players who don't lose it. And I think this is the where Kevin O'Connell talked about it. He had a great quote about flipping a Gatorade. I think this is the one where he talked about just staying calm as a team.
When things were going poorly there in the first half, it didn't seem like his demeanor changed.
No.
I mean, you obviously play an emotional game. How do you not let negative emotions kind of creep in those situations?
Well, it's not just him. It's our whole team. It's one of the people I was most proud of on Monday night was Justin Jefferson. This is a guy that expects to go out there and make a play every single play. And we weren't necessarily doing the things across the board, myself included, to have the success that we wanted. And I just felt like throughout the whole game, although maybe at times, people want to see a Gatorade cooler thrown or, a bench, knocked over or something, it was just about poise. It was about understanding if we, the things that were happening were as much to do with things we could correct by just doing our jobs a little bit better, and then just trying to sustain that level of execution. And that was what the focus was on. The focus was on dialing in on some of these looks that maybe we were talking about for the first time. The focus was on how am I making sure my technique and fundamentals apply to how I'm being played today in this football game, regardless of what our preparation might have been. And he was a great example of that. I mean, his sideline demeanor was outstanding.
So there you go. This team, I think no matter what happens throughout this year, you are not going to see them turn on each other. You're not going to see them melt. You're not going to see them when they're down 10 points, pointing fingers or anything like that. And I was thinking about today, like how much is Kevin O'Connell worth to that? How much is the roster build worth to that? There is very real value because not a lot of teams are able to do that. So that was one of the biggest developments that came out of that game is you could talk about it. It's the Mike Tyson quote. It's everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Everybody can go into that game saying, JJ McCarthy, nerves of steel. I know that you guys were talking about this in the comments at times of, hey, he won the national championship. He's going to be fine. He's not going to freak out. And, look, it's not the same, man. It's just not the same when you go in front of Soldier Field, but you're also playing against the best in the world on the biggest stage in the world. And it makes college football look a million miles away. And O'Connell did kind of joke about that a little bit. Like, yeah, the, what are they called? The F-18s or whatever the jets were that flew over the national anthem, all that stuff happens. And you got ESPN in the house and all that sort of stuff. The Bears fans were liquored up by the time they got there. It was very loud. I mean, it's just different. And for him to work his way through that and for the team to work their way through that, I know that Aaron Jones said today, hey, he didn't have to prove anything to us. That's a you guys thing, like media, not, me in particular, but that's a media thing, not to us. But you can't tell me that every player coming out of that game wasn't like, okay, we got one. Like, we got one that we can work with here at the quarterback position. They do have to prove it. Every player has to prove it. McCarthy does. Donovan Jackson does. Everybody. So that's big takeaways away from TCO Performance Center and the award that set the internet on fire this morning. Oh no, Packers fans. What if a Viking gets NFC Player of the Week? What will you do? Can you even feel the team the rest of the year? Relax. Anyway, so the injury report, though, maybe you might not want to relax looking at the injury report. Not ideal. So it was not good news on Blake Cashman. And Kevin O'Connell said multiple weeks for Cashman to be out. We'll really get a sense for this if they put him on IR. They haven't done that yet. We'll see if that happens. Maybe they'll be hopeful that it's just a couple of weeks for Cashman. And this right here is why you sign Eric Wilson, because the drop-off is there, of course. I mean, Cashman's one of the best linebackers in the league, but the drop-off is not enormous. Last year, the drop-off was so big when they had Cashman down that they just played Josh Metellus at linebacker. They just had nothing. And I think that was one of the big things this year for the front office was, okay, that really hurt us. Let's go find somebody who's a veteran that can play there. And of course, Wilson has familiarity with the Vikings and this organization and comes into a completely new defense. And this is what an impressive guy Eric Wilson is. And this is what I've always heard about Wilson from the time that he got here, made it as an undrafted free agent from Cincinnati, is that there is just so much respect for him and the way that he plays and the intelligence and the work ethic and all those things that come along with it, to be ready in that moment to go in, put on the green dot helmet and start calling the defense when you've probably only done that in training camp and in practices and maybe in front of the mirror, at least for this defense. Now, it's not the first time for Wilson ever, but for him to go out and do that was so impressive. So at very least, there's not a monumental drop from Blake Cashman, but Cashman getting hurt is a big loss because he is the play caller, because he's a heart and soul guy on the defense. And it's another injury for him that kind of comes when he's just running at 110%, trying to chase down Caleb Williams. So they'll need to give him proper time to come back. Not a lot of depth behind that with experienced Kobe King and Austin Keys, but at least having Eric Wilson allows for a starting caliber linebacker, a guy who played over 600 snaps last year, to be in for Cashman. Also, Ty Chandler got hurt, which opens the door for Xavier Scott to potentially be back there with Miles Price in terms of the return game. And I would expect, because Xavier Scott practiced in full today and is back from his ankle injury, so I would expect that Xavier Scott just gets elevated and on the depth chart. He was already on the roster, but gets elevated on the depth chart and he takes over back there, and they practice that a lot. So I think you are going to see some Xavier Scott. I mean, that's the thing about some of these undrafted free agents or late round draft picks. Like you're seeing them. You're seeing a Ty Ingram Dawkins. You're seeing a Miles Price. You're going to see a Xavier Scott get an opportunity. Sorry, I have to pull up my phone here to check the rest of the injury report. Jeff Okudah and Andrew Van Ginkel dealing with concussions did not practice today. Really going to wait and see on those for tomorrow and whether those guys are out of the protocol. Kevin O'Connell said that they are both in that protocol. That's where, if the concussion with Jeff Okudah, all concussions are serious, so don't misunderstand me. But if it is a injury that could keep him out multiple weeks, that's where that discussion of adding another cornerback does have to crop up here. Because not that there's a lot of people out there to get, but you have to make a phone call to somebody if that ends up being the case, that Okudah is out for multiple weeks. And just that room can't handle injuries. They don't have the dudes. It might mean if he can't play this week that we do see Dwight McGlothern. It might mean actually we'll learn. If he doesn't play this week, we will learn about their trust or lack of trust in Dwight McGlothern, because if Okudah can't play and they put McGlothern out there for even if it's 15 snaps, well, that shows that they trust him. If they put Fabian Morrow out there, well, that means they probably need to go add somebody else if they can, because that means that they really don't trust Dwight McGlothern. I mean, Morrow knows this defense from last year, but he wasn't in camp at all. And McGlothern's been in the last 2 camps, so we may learn a lot about that. And if Andrew Van Ginkel can't play, then it is Dallas Turner time. And it's a big game for Turner, although this is a tough one with this quarterback, because if you're expecting 7 pressures from Javon Hargrave and 6 from Allen and 7 from... It's not going to happen with Michael Penix. He just gets rid of the football. It's his superpower. He's so good at avoiding sacks. I think he was sacked like 13 times in college, and he played 5 years or whatever. I mean, it was crazy how rarely Michael Penix got sacked. He's carried that over to the NFL. But pressure, when he is flustered at all or confused by the noise, the get-off advantage when it comes to that should benefit Dallas Turner. And when I looked back at his game, what I thought was 2 things. Number one, Dallas Turner did a really good job in the run game. There was a tackle down in the red zone where Levi Drake Rodriguez got into the backfield pretty quickly, and Dallas Turner just shot out to DeAndre Swift and took him down. And there's a couple edge setting situations where he does a good job. Had a couple of pressures. PFF gave him 2 pressures in the game. I think with Dallas Turner, and this may end up how he always is, or it may be just a progression throughout this season and into the future, there's going to be, because he's not the biggest guy, some snaps where the tackle just gets him and he can't do a whole lot. But then when he hits the right move at the right time, there's no stopping him. And that might end up being who he is, because he's got the lightning burst, but he doesn't have the strength to just grab a guy and throw him back. I mean, he's not Everson Griffin, who could just, all right, if the first move doesn't work, how about just I throw you at the quarterback? And that's not going to be Dallas Turner, but it will be an enormous test for him if Andrew Van Ginkel can't play. So him and Okudah are definitely worth watching this week. KOC mentioned that a couple other guys are on this report that might not be serious injuries. Josh Oliver missed practice with an ankle, Ryan Kelly with a toe. And the other big news is that Christian Darrisaw practiced in full, and Harrison Smith, who I'm going to get to, was limited. Christian Darrisaw practicing in full is another big step. It's so clear how badly they need him. And if Christian Darrisaw is in that game, now this was another takeaway of watching the tape. If Christian Darrisaw is in that game, we're not talking about how bad he was in the first half, because there were 3 or 4 plays where it was just the left tackle straight up beat in seconds. Here's the snap, 1 Mississippi, 2, and he's beat. That's what can't happen. You can be a bad tackle and just get in the way, hang on, just push the guy by the quarterback, and it'll be okay. You could survive that. You can't survive 1.5 seconds and your edge rusher is at the quarterback, and there's nothing JJ McCarthy could do. So Christian Darrisaw's status remains huge. Him practicing today, even though it was a walkthrough, still big. And I think it's based on, if they had practiced in full, like what would it have been? As far as Harrison Smith, we talked to him for about a minute and a half in the locker room. There were meetings that were about to happen, and he just said that his absence was a health issue. And this has been my stance on this is, if it's a personal health issue thing, I'm just going to leave it at that with Harrison Smith. I think that players don't have to tell us their medical histories. I think if they get an ankle injury, then it has to be on an injury report. I think if they get an arm injury, but if it's something health-wise that he didn't want to divulge to the public, I respect that. And he's also back. If he was missing for the entire season, then I think we would be talking much more about it. But he's back. He's here. He's with the team. So it's just something he doesn't want to discuss in public. And again, I respect that. As far as his ramp up, it sounds like that's the biggest thing. And what he said was that he didn't go on IR and he expects to be back before week 4, which would have been the 4-week IR. Whether that's this week, we're going to have to find out. Maybe it's in a limited capacity if he doesn't feel like he's up to 100%. And you have to also credit Jay Ward, who played extremely well in that game in about 25 snaps or so, and they were able to fill in for him. So that's kind of the injury report, but a lot of relevant things. Oh, and Drake London, who a lot of folks in Atlanta thought wouldn't practice today, was limited. And maybe that's like a Jalen Johnson thing. Teams are going to play games with limited. I mean, if the guy ties his shoes, you could put him down as limited. So maybe they're playing games over there in Atlanta with Drake London's injury, but that is one to watch because that Atlanta team does not have a lot of talent outside of Drake London in the wide receiver room. Darnell Mooney last year was really good with Kirk. I don't think he's a great wide receiver overall, and kind of just guys after that. So they rely on Pitts, they rely on Robinson, but London is their workhorse. And if he is out, that will be a big problem. So we're back, guys, when officially we're talking about injury reports are a huge deal. And we're going to go through them and we're going to watch them closely and take it down to the final second and sometimes get surprises like we did with Kyler Gordon. So there you go. Whew, a lot going on in Minnesota Vikings land. What is on your guys' mind? So what do you think? Oh, before I forget, I will get you the FanDuel question of the day because sometimes I can get a little caught up here. So let me do that. Tell you about one of our sponsors. Put your questions in the comments. What's on your mind now? You got the game is over with. The picking apart of the game is over with. National TV again. Atlanta Falcons. What are you thinking? FanDuel question of the day is Jordan Mason was a standout from the game. After seeing him in action, how many carries would you like to see Jordan Mason get this week? How many would you like for him this week? I don't think it's a good idea to overreact to Jordan Mason having a great game and say, hey, stick Aaron Jones on the bench because you saw what Aaron Jones can do in the passing game. I also don't think we can tell if Jones is cooked or something based on a couple carries. I think it was just Mason's night. I'd like to see them play it that way. It reminds me so much of Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon, where they have different skill sets and they each can bring something to the table. And if one guy is rolling, then put that guy in the game, especially if you get ahead in the game, Jordan Mason. If you have, just tossing it out there, a 2-point conversion you want to convert, and you're at the 1-yard line because the other team committed a penalty, feel free to give it to Jordan Mason and use that interior offensive line, which in reviewing the film last night again, I thought that the PFF grades matched up with what I saw. There were just a lot of really terrific moments with the interior offensive line. And imagine me having been here for a decade talking to you guys about how bad the interior offensive line is, watching this film like, look at them. Look at them. Look at them block against the stunt. I can't believe it. Do you believe in miracles? There was a play where Chicago ran a pretty nasty stunt where their edge rusher was way out wide and he comes flying in full speed. And I think this actually might have been, this was the touchdown to Aaron Jones. And Ryan Kelly sticks himself in the ground, slams into that guy and buries him. And you're like, I have not seen a center do that in Minnesota in a long time. So Ryan Kelly and his health, toe injury, is pretty relevant. Keeping him on the field for 17 games is pretty relevant. And Donovan Jackson, I think after watching it, there was the one thing that really made me think there is something there. Some of his PFF grade, he was not always challenged the most on some of the best rushes that Chicago had. Some of them went the other direction, but he did a good job picking up the stunts. He did a good job one-on-ones in pass protection. There wasn't a lot of dropbacks, so that matters too. But there were a couple plays where his athleticism was so on display and his physical nature was so on display. And there was a play where he got beat a little bit and the edge rusher, it was on a stunt, and the edge rusher was able to get around him enough to knock the ball out of McCarthy's hands. The one that was almost a fumble where it was like the arm is going forward. That was against Jackson. But even then, you saw him take the initial punch and hang on. And I think that probably McCarthy, if he's like a millisecond earlier, it's fine. But he was able to hang on even on one of those where it wasn't the easiest and he was kind of getting beat there a little bit. But there was an outside zone, or maybe it was a duo. I guess it was a double team block. Yeah, it was a double team block where they're moving left to right. And Ryan Kelly is blocking the nose tackle. And Jackson is supposed to be running to his left, but turning his hips and double team blocking while moving to his left. And the way that he moved, we haven't seen a guard move here in a long time. So Donovan Jackson had a great debut, and that tape was worth watching. So what was it? Oh, FanDuel question of the day, though, is how many carries for Jordan Mason this week after you saw him last week? And let me tell you about one of my good friends, Denise Satova. And this episode is brought to you by Denise Satova and her team at TOVA, QDRO, and Retirement Valuators. Guys, the law can be pretty intimidating when you're talking about courts and judges, juries, and all that stuff. But these are real people who are involved in the law, and behind everything that happens within the law, Denise Satova's Beyond the Bar podcast breaks it all down. So if you seek to learn a little bit more about the lives of lawyers and judges, who are they? What do they do away from the courtroom? What insight have they gained from working within the law and working in courtrooms? What can we take away from them? Well, that's where you want to check out the Beyond the Bar podcast. Denise interviews those folks and finds out that there's so much more beyond the black and white to the law. And just a couple examples from her recent episodes. How do lawyers and mediators maintain the balance of their emotions versus the truth? And she even has an episode about how AI is changing the world, the businesses, the legal world. So there's a lot to the Beyond the Bar podcast. And I was also once a guest. So off the mic, Denisa and her husband, Glenn, are Big Purple Insider fans. And she also runs a forensic retirement lab if you are a divorce lawyer and your client's 401k or IRA was around before the marriage. Let her help you out with no fumbles. You'll want to check out her Settlement Language Lab. It's a free session for law firms, like a training camp for retirement drafting. So check her out on LinkedIn, Denisa, TOVA. Tell her you heard her on Purple Insider. And if you are a divorce lawyer, get that Settlement Lab or just check out that Beyond the Bar podcast. Okay, questions, thoughts. Jay needs a cornerback now. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, they might. It depends on how far along they feel like Dwight McGlothern is, because Dwight McGlothern has been developed over 2 years, and he is knowledgeable in the system, and he's made plays in training camp. I mean, it's a daily thing of making plays in training camp. And what it comes down to for McGlothern, if he's the one who has to play, is just how much are you locked in to the system, to the fundamentals, the technique, and all that stuff that matters so much to them, but is boring to talk about, but it matters. How much are you locked in on that stuff? And they can also, in this game, if Harrison Smith comes back, they could play a ton of three safeties. I think that Jay Ward earned some trust the other night as well. And remember, Jay Ward also is a guy that used to play corner in college and has played safety, so he's a bit of a hybrid type of player. We might see more of Ward and Theo Jackson and Josh Metellus playing that nickel role that he's typically played if Jeff Okudah is not ready. It feels like the cornerback room is a little rickety, and it was not an impressive performance either from the starters in that game. Byron Murphy did have a huge tackle to help them score before the half, but there were a couple plays where it looked like, not sure what happened there against Chicago. Need to be better in this game. But it's just not an easy thing to snap your fingers and then all of a sudden you've got another corner. There you go. Let's see. Sorry, I'm scrolling back to where you guys were first starting to answer or ask questions and comments and so forth. Stitch Edits says, was happy to hear JT bring up the 3 critical drops as well as Jefferson running that route short on 3rd down. Big momentum killers and all big factors to the slow start and all things that you would not expect. So PFF didn't give Thielen a drop, and the all 22 from that angle makes it look like a drop. I think on TV, when I looked up, because in the press box we have TVs like up above us, when I looked up I thought I saw somebody's hand come in and knock it out, which is probably why PFF did not give it a drop. Adam Thielen usually catches that ball. Justin Jefferson always catches the balls that were coming his way. And you're right. I mean, and that's why it's when you break it down with somebody like JT and you watch his videos to give you, like, he's not a Viking fan. He's a former Viking, but only briefly. So he's not a Viking fan. He's just sort of an objective observer, and he will tell you that he doesn't know all the play calls and the drops, but at least you get the best perspective possible. Because I like to watch the film. I've done it for years. I don't know what JT knows about what's right and wrong from the quarterback, and not to that level. So I think it was interesting to see him contextualize. And the biggest thing that JT pointed out that I think is going to be enormous going forward for JJ McCarthy is that there were very few times, and I've watched 100 JT O'Sullivan breakdowns, and sometimes when the quarterback is making bad decisions, there's a lot of critiques when that happens. What are we doing here? Like, why are we throwing this ball? And there were not many decision critiques from him. There was, hey, this has got to get out faster, or this ball, maybe could have gone here instead. The one that they actually got the pass interference, he was having trouble figuring out why the ball went down the sideline to the running back when there were other options that made more sense with that type of play. But even if those things happen where it's a little late or the play call doesn't quite get in and so forth, those things that you'd expect from an inexperienced quarterback, bad decision making is killer. And there just wasn't a lot of bad decisions. And all summer long, they told him, well, if it's not there, play it safe and just scramble. And then he did in some instances. And sometimes it was a guy reaches a paw out and gets him, where if you get, if you break that tackle, if you don't get tripped, you get a first down, you keep moving. It was kind of an everything that could go wrong went wrong until it didn't, when it started to click. And I think those things, a lot of them, what are you always looking for? Correctable or not? There was a lot of correctable stuff. Justin Jefferson running short of the sticks. That's not going to happen again. Like Justin Jefferson running into somebody in mesh or dropping a pretty easy sliding to the ground catch, probably not going to happen again. So if the decisions are there and the reads are there and the protections are there, but the execution isn't quite there, well, that gives you the idea that it should go in the right direction. If it was bad decisions, if it was Caleb Williams looking like, I don't really know where to go with this football so many times, then I would say there's a lot more work to do. But I think they were, after coming away watching that, I thought they were very close to a lot of things happening that just didn't in that game. Brand says the players believed in JJ prior to the game. After the game, they were willing to run through a brick wall with him. I think that the reason, the difference is that everything they saw in training camp was a guy acting like a pro. He was leading the offense, getting the calls to them, running practice, getting stuff done at practice, working with everybody, all that stuff. So there's that phase of proving it to your teammates, is they need to see you care. They need to see you work the way they work as veteran players. So that's a box checked. And if somebody works that way, and Aaron Jones talked about this with Jordan Love. He said that behind the scenes, they knew Jordan Love was going to be a good quarterback in Green Bay before he ever took the field. But then there's phase two, which is you got to prove it. You got to, these guys have Pro Bowls. They have many $1 million contracts. They have impressive NFL careers. Some of them have records. Some of them might be in the Hall of Fame someday. Like, yeah, you gotta prove it. You gotta prove it in the moments. I mean, what would this isn't, it's not a playground. This isn't for fun. Like, these guys are trying to win. So they did need to see that, I think. If he had come a little short, I don't think they're giving up on him. I just think that maybe your description is pretty good. Like, it just reinforced what they thought they knew. Let's see. Mr. Mayor, why was everyone talking about the dude who did the national anthem like it was good? It had to be one of the worst renditions I've ever heard. Oh, so that's a Chicago thing. That guy does the Blackhawks, and it's like this big presentation and everybody sings along with it. Like, that's their thing. Also, if I were to critique other people's singing, That would be unfair. That would be unfair. Not an expert in the singing area, but I just know that that's what Chicago, the Blackhawks at United Center have always done. And their crowd sings along and they clap through it and they all be a part of it because it is ridiculous and over the top. And so it's all part of the thing. But that's a local thing. Just like there's some things in Minnesota that would require explanations about why does everybody in Minnesota do this, that, or the other thing. Like there would have to, it's the same thing with Chicago. Like that's their thing. Rob says Vikings O-line with a backup rookie to, I don't know what this word is, but I think you mean guys debuting. 0 false starts. Bears O-line at home, 4 false starts. Oh, okay, yeah, right. They got I see what you mean. They got a rookie and 2 guys who are debuting, yeah, and they had no false starts. I think false starts are usually the quarterback. I mean, sometimes a guy loses his snap count, but even then, like usually the quarterback is supposed to have the cadence right, and the cadence was an issue for Chicago that entire training camp. It was not for the Vikings. But it's also Ryan Kelly, everybody be on the same page. Donovan Jackson, to me, did not look like a rookie in this game. I didn't see any moment from him. I think I watched him on almost every play. I didn't see anything from him where I went, oh, that's a rookie moment, Donovan. Now he's going to face harder competition as the season goes along, but it was a really great debut for Donovan Jackson. Jim says, surprises me how no one brings up the refs blatantly helping the Vikings in that game. I don't know if they meant to do it, Jim, but you are 100% right. Now, there was debate over the holding call. I think that, people were watching Darnell Wright and his snatch technique or whatever it was that gets called for holding more than it should, and pointing out that it was the wrong number, that it was somebody else who was doing it, and that's who they meant to call. I'm not really sure. There's no question about it that they got breaks in that game for that to happen. They got some enormous breaks. They got a missed field goal from the other team. The luck stuff, it went in their way. The penalties, 4 false starts, a holding at the worst time, a missed field goal, a botched end of game. I mean, this was something that I didn't actually think of at the end of the game. But then when it was brought up, I was like, oh yeah, they could have just kicked it out of bounds. Not out of the back of the end zone, out of bounds anywhere. And it would have been a much better idea than what they did, which was kick it short. And I know Ben Johnson said after the game, they didn't mean to, but if he could have just kicked it out of bounds or short of the landing area, and then it would have wasted no time. It was right there for them. So in a lot of ways, and I promise if you listen to any Chicago podcasts, they were, I'm sure, talking about how many different ways they fell apart in that game. And the referees did play a role. There was a couple of, even hands to the face. I don't know the definition of that penalty, but that was one that mattered. A lot of things had to go the Vikings' way. And if you play that game 1,000 times, they don't win it 1,000 times. They probably win it about 10 times or 10% of the time. If you play it over 1,000 times with how much the Bears outplayed them early and they were able to hang on. At the same time, though, the results are the results. They took advantage of all those things. And the better teams are going to take advantage. Like, teams will give you opportunities, and the better team is going to take advantage. It's kind of just, we were talking about United Center. Every team has turnovers in hockey, but the teams who score off of them are usually better, right? You're going to get turnovers. You're going to get chances. You're going to get the refs to help you from now and then and things like that. You just got to, you got to find a way to take advantage. But they had a lot of stuff go their way. And what I think Kevin O'Connell was trying to say as part of his answer, maybe it was to me or maybe there was another question where he just said it's not our standard. Like, that game was not their standard. I think we all agree they have to play a lot better through the entire game in order to win against the Falcons and be a legitimate offense going forward. Defense overall, I don't know. Sometimes you chase around Caleb Williams, you get him out of structure that many times, and he makes spectacular plays. You sort of just tip your cap. But if you have 3 guys chasing him while he's having to make a play over and over again, you've done a pretty good job. Overall, the defense kept them in it and allowed them to get a chance to win. Jay says, let's run the heck out of the ball on Sunday night. Mason is a beast. I have not looked at this yet. I'm just turning the page here. over to this week and the Atlanta Falcons, how many yards did Tampa Bay run for against the Falcons? I'm curious. I don't know if their defense is better this year. I mean, I know they got James Pierce as the first round pick. I don't know if it's been better or not. So I'm curious about that. If the Falcons gave up a lot of running yards in this game, I'm looking. Let's see. Because Tampa Bay, they were, not really. Not really. Baker Mayfield had 40 yards. Bucky Irving only averaged 2.6 yards a carry in that game against Atlanta. And then Rashad White had 2 carries for 14 yards. And I also wonder about Tampa Bay and their new offensive coordinator, but they didn't run very effectively against Atlanta. So they're going to need a good game out of Jordan Mason. Kurt says Mason downhill should be our number one go-to with everything, or our number one go-to because everything else works because of it. I 100% agree that with Jordan Mason, they set up the bigger plays later in the drive and the bigger plays later in the game. Because when he was in there and you're getting run on, and that's the psychological feeling of having someone like Jordan Mason, is when you're getting run on and you're getting blasted by this big giant dude who doesn't go down easy and just powers forward. At some point, you start to lean into that, lean forward, get on your toes. We got to stop this guy. And then that's where play action hits you. And the biggest play of the game, I thought, for getting JJ McCarthy really going, outside of, he said it was the throw to Naylor, and I'm sure that's his feeling thing of, hey, I just threw that ball really well. I'm feeling good. But the biggest, the most difficult throw and most impressive throw was that play action to the outside for Justin Jefferson that went for 17 yards. I was looking at it on the tape, and he threw it from the right hash at the 45-yard line inside the 20 on the other side of the field. I'm not a mathematician, but that's a long way. I don't know exactly how long, but it's a long way. And he put it in the exact right spot for Jefferson to come back to it. And I think there was a lot of attention there on the run because of Jordan Mason. So it matters there. And it also matters in staying ahead of the sticks, which they're able to do. You're going to have a lot of times where JJ McCarthy just gives the ball to somebody else and they do something. And then he can come in and make plays, but not having him do everything. And that's what it felt like in that game in the first half. 2nd and 8, 2nd and 10, all of a sudden you're in 3rd down. And there was a lot of that in the game. That was the exact opposite of what they wanted. They wanted to take a lot of the control of the game away from JJ McCarthy, of stay ahead of the sticks, get easy completions, move on. And then here you are, 3rd down, and the crowd's going crazy and they're dialing up their stunts and blitzes or whatever. They didn't blitz a ton, but their stunts and stuff like that. And they're locking in on coverage. And all of a sudden you're saying, this is not what you want it to be. Jordan Mason allows you to play the way you want to play if you're the Vikings. Rob says Jay Ward played a lot more than Okudah. Yeah, he played about 10 snaps more, 9 snaps more, probably elevate more. Well, that's what I mean. We're going to find out. We're going to find out if they want the veteran to be in there, if Jeff Okudah can't play, if they want the veteran or if they want Dwight McGlothern. Just always kind of interested in what they really thought of somebody during camp, because that's when we're going to find out. Like, did they really think that McGlothern was coming along as a development guy, or do they not trust him to the point where they have to go with the veteran Morrow, who can play? If he has to play 15 snaps, I think you're in okay shape, but they would rather have Okudah back. Taylor says, for all the draft hate on Kwesi's first rounders, or his first rounders are looking good, and he's finding plenty of ways to supplement the roster with young, meaningful guys. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the draft thing, I just took that entire discussion and I got out a lock safe and I put it in there and I turned the key and I kept the key because we'll bring it out some other time. But to your point, though, as we start to see how this thing is playing out, and you do see Levi Drake Rodriguez and Ty Ingram Dawkins and Jalen Redmond as these 3 undrafted 5th round, 7th round, and they're trusting them and they're giving them a lot of snaps behind Javon Hargrave and behind Jonathan Allen. And okay, well, those are young players that they're developing that were not the first round draft pick. You've got Naylor as a big contributor in this game. If you caught 1 for 28, you were a big contributor. But Naylor, KOC pointed this out, Naylor was the most wronged man in this game. Naylor was open 3 or 4 times early in the game. He threw up the Randy Moss hand at one point, and it was pressure because of Justin School giving up a pressure. If Darrisaw is over there, that ball is going up to Jalen Naylor for 50 yards. I thought that Naylor had a good game, but they are bringing along some players here that are supplementing the roster. Just not a lot of them at corner at the moment, but Jay Ward stepping up is important. Theo Jackson, another guy that they were able to find and bring in. Rob, I mean, you might be right about Tavier Thomas. They just haven't shown any real desire to play Tavier at anywhere except safety. I know in his history, he's got nickel corner experience, but they haven't put him there in training camp at all. So that means I think that he's probably more of the backup safety. Taylor says Dallas Turner's run fits were amazing. I was very impressed by how he played against the run. Very impressed. Not completely insane. I see a minimum of 3 sacks. Could happen. Michael Penix is really, really good at getting rid of the football. But US Bank Stadium, it causes problems. It really does. Rob points out that the Falcons' right tackle's out for the season. Could be Grenard's day. Or, I mean, if depends on if they are going to have him line up over the right tackle or stay on the left side. This is why I love the data so much, guys. I could just find out. Because my initial thought was, he's probably going to line up over the left tackle all day. But now I can just check and see, well, how often did he line up on the right side in this game? I don't think it was that many, but no, it was a little bit. It was a little bit. He played left outside linebacker, which is the right side of the offensive line, 16 snaps to 38. So you're right. Not having their starting tackle could be a big deal. It also could be an opportunity for Dallas Turner to win some reps there. Daniel says the pressures impressed me. Caleb escaped like 9 sacks. Yeah, they were winning up front. They were definitely winning up front. And if you can win on your defensive tackles and then have outside rushers like this, and they mixed in blitzes with success in the game as well. I mean, that was impressive how they had, and one of them was, it was illegal with Ivan Pace smashing into Caleb Williams, but at the same time, it was a successful rush that they got in there as well. And that will be something that I want to see against Michael Penix. How often do you blitz? Because he does get rid of the ball quickly. Mr. Mayor, how was Rouse compared to School in camp? It was Justin School the entire time at the starting left tackle when Darrisaw was recovering. Rouse was never given those opportunities. I thought Rouse had a much better second half of the camp than first half and started to come along. I mean, there were times in the game where I was thinking the same thing. Put in the other guy. Experience is great, but it's not great if the guy's just getting beat all the time. And even if Josh Oliver's a little banged up, but you can't just help the left tackle every single play. Although I do want to say to K-Mac, who says he gives me TJ Clemmings vibes, not that bad. Not that bad. Nope. Clemmings was unplayable to the point where almost every snap seemed like it was an instant loss. I didn't think that way for Justin School. I just don't think he has the athleticism to keep up with guys that are this powerful and this quick. Daniel says, School is a backup, fill in if necessary. I mean, there's just not many good backups out there, and he had a very tough night. I would expect that he will still play, though, and he'll be out there for this game. Jay says School is not as bad as you think. He settled down in the fourth. I watched the film back. It was rough, man. It was a rough game for him, but it's going to be. With the backup left tackle, it's always going to be pretty rough. That's why they need Darrisaw back. I don't think that there's other players that they should be playing instead, or how dare they get this guy? They don't know what they're doing or anything like that. It's just that's the life when you have to play a backup left tackle. So he had to hang on for dear life. And that's all that he could really do. Yeah, I agree with Brand. He's about as good as you can get. He allowed 4 pressures. They survived them, but there was some plays where you went, man, there was something there. School or Cam Robinson. Well, Cam Robinson is a starter. He's a better player than School, especially at pass protection. But Robinson in the second half of the year fell off the face of the earth, though. And it looked like Cam Robinson in the second half of the year. Nick says Mason should get, this is the FanDuel question of the day, if you're just joining, was how many carries this week for Jordan Mason would you like to see? Nick says Mason should get more than Jones. He's just a bigger, more physical back. I'm not ready to write off Aaron Jones, who ran for 4.5 yards a carry last year, over 1,000 yards, has had a great career. But if Mason's rolling and they can't tackle him, then you play Jordan Mason. And Marauder says Mason 20 carries, Aaron Jones 15. I mean, Jones being able to line up at wide receiver, what I wouldn't mind seeing occasionally is those two guys on the field at the same time. I've never seen KOC do that, but feel free to take the idea, Mr. O'Connell, if you want. I think that Jones being so gifted in the passing game, he was saying today that he does stuff where the opposing team's linebacker will say to him, like, man, I didn't know you were running that route, or I didn't expect a running back to run that route. Like, he's able to do that. I think that they should still stay closer to 50-50. Mr. Mayer has it at 66% of snaps to 34. I want Jones out there for the passing game, but I also don't think, like, we are talking about Aaron Jones here. This is a guy who has averaged 5 yards a carry in the NFL. He's been one of the best running backs of the last decade. Let's not go crazy after one game. I just think 50-50 is good. I think 15 rushes for Mason, 10 rushes for Aaron Jones, and 5 catches for Aaron Jones sounds like a really good touch distribution there. That's a football term, touch distribution. Not completely insane. Says, why no screens to slow down the rush? Well, I don't know. And that's a good point, because I thought, especially if your left tackle is struggling a little bit, I thought they needed to get the screen game going earlier. Maybe I just can't stop with stuff that drove me crazy for years. They did a lot of what I asked. Interior linemen, interior pressure, a lot of stuff that I've been asking about for you. They drafted a receiver. They got the rookie quarterback contract. But, like, can I ask for one more thing? An effective screen game? Can I just ask for that? Because it's been a while. The screens that they ran, I think they ran 3 of them. That was it. Maybe one to Jefferson. And the one that was another screen that counted as a run. I agree with you. I would like to see Donovan Jackson running at people. Maybe with Darisaw out, it's a little harder. I would like to see them moving in front of Aaron Jones. He's just got a great ability to find space in those situations with the screens. I thought that they should have done that more. I agree. Matt says 18 carries for Jordan Mason, 8 to 12 for Jones with 3 to 4 catches. Giovanni wants 20 plus carries for Jordan Mason. Don and Bethany says, not sure of the number, but Mason going in the first half more instead of waiting until the third series would be to our benefit. Now, that is a really good point. Don't worry about who the starting running back is. Jordan Mason right away is a good idea. I think it's a great point that handing off to Jordan Mason right away is a tone setter. Like, these things still exist. Tone setting, giving it to Jordan Mason and getting ahead of the sticks to get some play action in, but just giving this, it's not establishing the run so much as it is, we've got this guy that we'll use all day and you're going to have to tackle him all day. Josh Metellus said to me when I asked about tackling Mason, he said, I felt it for weeks after they played San Francisco. I mean, you see that guy, like, muscles on muscles. He's just a big, powerful guy with a lot of burst. Who wants to do that? Who wants to tackle that guy and get that going right away at the beginning of the game? CM Boo Earns says, would like to see Mason get 10 to 15 and we try to get Jones heated up. He is such a threat when they don't know if he is going to run or take a, I assume, if he's going to run a route and take a handoff. Yeah, you got it right. Yeah. So that's exactly right, is that Jones does bring another dynamic that the opponent has to pay attention to, which is where he's going to line up. Is he going to be going out or is he going to stay in for pass protection? Like they really don't know when he's in the game. I'd like to see both of them 50-50, but I like the idea of Mason getting out there early and just smacking into some people against the Atlanta Falcons, who I think, I don't know. I mean, are they the toughest team? It seems that they did well against the run, so maybe I shouldn't say that they're not. But reputation-wise, in recent years, I don't know if they've had a reputation as being the nastiest defense. So right away, kind of hitting them in the mouth a bit. Like, let's get football-y, my friends. Let's get football-y here. Let's see. Is that T-Money? Someone who may be looking for a way out is Dallas Turner, highlighting our first rounders, JJ and Jackson, but Turner is getting no acknowledgement. Oh, yeah. We did talk a little bit about him. You're right. That it's, I mean, with Dallas Turner for that game, I'm sure that everybody wants every game to be a referendum on what every player is going to be. We always do that. Like the most recent thing we saw is the truth, and that's how it always works with every player. But I thought, Dallas Turner, and I was thinking about this today with Dallas Turner, is that there's always going to be, because of his draft status, these crazy high expectations. Why don't you get, 19 sacks a year? They traded up for you, et cetera, et cetera. He played a good game, and he didn't get a lot of pressures, but he made plays in the run game, and stuffing the run against Chicago was huge. If he's a really good contributor on the team, I don't think we have to always do this. In fact, I want to ask somebody with the Falcons about how they feel about Bijan Robinson, because there has to be that same discussion. Like, Bijan Robinson's a really good player, but there's other running backs in the world, but you'd also rather have Bijan Robinson than not have him on your team. But they gave up a high draft pick, which is just always going to end up being the discussion round and round. But if Andrew Van Ginkel is out, this is a huge game for Dallas Turner to step up. Let's see. Pro Desra Beats. Sometimes you guys have some wild names. What do you think of those missed open throws from Caleb Williams? We got to tighten up. A better quarterback would fit those. I think you nailed it. That some of it might be pressure, probably is pressure. Some of it's Caleb's not that good and is not that accurate and has a lot of wow throws and a lot of bad throws. And there were ones, and look, every quarterback has throws in a game that they're going to miss. So you could go through every game and say, well, they missed that one throw. Like, yeah, that happens. That's, it's not Tom Brady out there. It's Caleb Williams. But there were 5 throws in that game that make it really hard for the Vikings to win. And he missed a lot of them. And that's a problem that Chicago is going to have to talk about at their podcasts and radio shows all week long. We'll circle back to that when the Vikings play the Bears again. But if you're analyzing this individual game, you can point to a lot of moments where the Bears gave it away, including Caleb Williams missing a lot of those throws. And it was one of those, if only for this, if only for that, if only for that. And the Vikings needed every single one of them to work out, including Williams not being that accurate. So it was a problem for them. That's really the only way that I view that, is just that Williams is still not that accurate of a quarterback, even after another year. Ben Johnson is still good at his job and drew up open wide receivers, and they needed some breaks to win that game. On a week-to-week basis, and we've been through this over the years, I kind of look at the wins and losses from 2 different perspectives. From the, did you really beat that team? And then the result. Did you outplay that team? And the result are the 2 different ways I look at it. And I'll just give you some examples from last year. The Vikings against Arizona. This game reminded me of the Vikings against Arizona because they played very badly for most of the game. And then Arizona kept them in it, and they ended up winning. Arizona is not a really serious team. Chicago's not a really serious team. And this week and the coming weeks, you have to outplay your opponent, probably against Atlanta, who's got a lot of talent, certainly against Pittsburgh. Cleveland maybe just, make sure that the ball's pumped up and you're ready to go. But I don't know. Cleveland, their defense did a really great job against Cincinnati. So they have to be taken seriously in London. I mean, there's some of these games coming up. And of course, Cincinnati, they are going to be tested and they have to outplay their opponents. And that was really the difference between 2022 and 2024. And I know how both ended, but in 2022, I thought the Vikings didn't outplay their opponents a lot of times where they won games, maybe 4 or 5 different times. And last year was maybe 1 or 2. And I thought they outplayed a lot of their opponents. Well, they're 0 for 1 in outplaying your opponent, at least handily, but coming away with a win. And that doesn't mean that like Chicago, they don't get like some sort of points for this, but they didn't start to finish manhandle their opponent, outplay them, outgain them, hold on to the ball a lot more. They played less sloppy. They didn't screw up the end, right? And they got some breaks from Chicago. But it wasn't a, wow, you just wildly beat them down and outplayed them. They need to be in that space going forward in these next few games, because a game like that, where you're in the third quarter and you have 5% chance to win, you just can't count on that being a win all that often. Brett says, I'm going to say 15 carries for Jordan Mason. Jones will get 10 or less. And McCarthy with 4 times. McCarthy's, his running makes a difference. Trey says, I'm late, but they run mesh routes a lot. They do it sometimes, yeah. I mean, they like to run Justin Jefferson down the field. Usually. They do it sometimes with Jefferson. I don't feel like I see all the time. I think they do it with like TJ Hawkinson a lot and a receiver. I don't see all the time Justin Jefferson coming 3 yards across the middle of the field. I don't think that happens very much. So that's what I meant. Like they do have that in the offense. Every team has that in the offense. But usually I don't see Jefferson running like right in front of the line of scrimmage too much. So that's what I meant. Joe, JT's comment, you can't throw it and catch it. Yeah, that's one of his favorites. Yep, for sure. Definitely one of his favorites. Zoomer Kev says, Penix was my draft crush, so I'm curious to watch him. That QB class is crazy. It certainly is. And, you listen to Kevin O'Connell talk about him, and I was definitely wondering, and I'm sure he'll never tell, but I was wondering if they were both on the board, would they have picked Penix or would they have picked McCarthy? There's 2 just very different situations, though. Penix had the injury history, and he also was a lot more mature. As a quarterback, he had played so much more football, whereas JJ McCarthy was an opportunity for Kevin O'Connell to form a bond very early in the guy's career and build on that year after year for potentially a very long time. And the fact that we saw in their first game together how well they click as coach and quarterback, that was another big one. Another big takeaway was just that those 2 clicking as coach and QB, again, it can work in practice all day long, but can it really work? That's where you have to find out in games, and we found out in games. And those 2 guys sorting out problems and working together the way they did for many years to come, you could see that with those 2. But I'm with you, Zoomer Kev. I really liked Michael Penix too. I thought the arm talent was terrific. The leadership was terrific. He was one of my favorite players in that draft because of all that stuff. Although I think I probably said to you guys at the time that all the quarterbacks are all of my children, that, I love them all equally as the rookie quarterback contract. Every single one of them, if they end up on the Vikings, it'll be fine because that's the advantage that you're looking for. And all of them had great traits, and all of them had some reason or other to question this, that, or the other thing. And as of right now, Caleb Williams probably the farthest behind, though. Drake May, has anybody ever played worse and just gotten, maybe Sam Darnold got this early in his career, but he's in New York, so he got demolished. Drake May hasn't played that great. And it's, been a lot of, well, that team stinks, that franchise stinks. And that's very true. It's just Drake May, no matter what he does in any games, it seems to be like, not his fault. But also, no, we never let these guys develop. we give one game and then we got to decide, right? Or 1 week or one season and then we got to decide. So that there's still a lot to be decided on that class. Susan, Dan Orlovsky said he thought that JJ was throwing to the correct places and basically right timing fundamentals were sound. The throws were a little off. I thought that the timing was a little slow on a good number of them, but I did think it was the right places. I thought it was the right ideas. And the other thing was too, that you kind of take for granted the times that he pulled the ball down and didn't get anything out of it. What did he lose in sacks? Like 6 total yards. He didn't lose big gains in sacks, but he also didn't get strip sacked. He also didn't throw it somewhere stupid. Like, he did a good job of not freaking out when the pressure was on. And I think he had a good clock in his head of when it was time to just say, all right, I got to bail on this play. And he bailed early to a couple of plays where he had an 11-yard run that he bailed a little early, but you'd be much better off bailing a little bit early and then going on to the next play than you would be making a mistake. So I thought decision-making wise that it was right. So Daniel says the refs didn't make the Bears miss open receivers. We can acknowledge that there were a lot of things that happened that fell into place for the Vikings to win, but also McCarthy was great in those moments. Those are two separate things that are both correct. Holding penalty, false starts, screw up at the end with the clock, open receivers that they missed, all those things that Chicago gave the Vikings, they gave them. But you don't have to take advantage, and the Vikings did take advantage. And so taking advantage of the opportunities that you get is a big deal toward winning football games, and the Vikings are often a team that has done that under Kevin O'Connell. Not completely insane. You are what your record says you are, and the Bears are 0-1. Yeah, that's it only took 1 week to get that quote in here. Look, I mean, I'm not saying the Bears are good. I don't think they're good at all. I think they're going to be, maybe like a 7 or 8 win team at best. At best, I think they have some talent there on the defensive side when they get their corners back, but that's going to be a long year for Ben Johnson. I think if he gets to 8 wins, it's probably good for them. But, you never know. It's just 1 week that we saw. Brett said people are acting like Caleb didn't escape pressure just to miss passes. He's inaccurate, but he is way more elusive than all other quarterbacks but one. His elusiveness is insane. It's insane. I mean, just completely nuts with his ability to get away. I could see why, the team would draft him number 1 overall, and then his ability to throw it. I apologize, Derek, that the flags in the background are a little screwy. As you can tell to my right here, a little bit of construction going on in the studio. I will fix them when the construction is over with in a couple of days. But for now, you're going to look at sideways flags. I'm sorry. I'm trying. Anyway, let's see. Javier says, at what point did you think that we were going to start bringing up the forbidden, I think you mean to say punter word? Is that what you're talking about? Is punter the word? Yeah, we didn't talk about the punter because the punter did a good job in the game. Special teams really stood out. Yeah, D. Smith, I know they had 100 rushing yards against the Falcons, but 39 of it went to the quarterback. Oh, ponder. I thought you meant punter because there's been a lot of Ryan Wright criticism throughout the offseason, or them just sticking with Ryan Wright. Ponder. Oh yeah, I saw, you're right. That word is banned on the show but I did see it. On social media a little bit during the game, that people were saying this looks like Christian Ponder. I didn't think it looked like Christian Ponder at all. I thought it looked bad. And I was not up in the press box thinking like, what you guys don't realize is that they screwed up mesh. You can't see that stuff at full speed. So I was thinking the same thing you were thinking, like, what is happening with this offense? Brutal. At the same time, I think, I was able to maybe keep a little more context that it was his first half of football that he ever played. Ponder did not have the things that JJ McCarthy has in terms of whatever you want to call it, gamer, ice in his veins, guts, whatever it is, the stuff that is hard to put a finger on, but you know when you see it, and everybody knows it when they see it with JJ McCarthy. Now there's questions going forward, which is he going to execute the offense consistently enough? I thought his accuracy was actually pretty good in this game. I didn't think, oh my gosh, he's spraying the ball everywhere, but that still remains a question. He's thrown 20 passes. But can it be consistent? Can they get on the same page and start rolling? And it is worth bringing up that they're without their number 2 wide receiver and their number 1 left tackle. Those are very valuable people that they're without. Rob watched the Falcons game. Rob getting a neck roll here tonight. It was a suggestion, I think maybe from my mom, that we need something to like pop up on the screen with a neck roll every time I say that. But if you were grinding Falcons tape, then you get one. Bucky Irving looked good early, but only, the numbers were not too good at all for him. I'm curious about, and the game script shouldn't have impacted that. I'm curious to go look and see why, if it was maybe just the Falcons, if they were good defensively on their D-line. They haven't been in recent years, but that doesn't mean that they can't be this year on their defensive line in terms of stopping the run. Let me go take a look at their run defense. Like, who graded well for them? It looks like, oh, wow, this is interesting. Oh, Mike Hughes played 58 snaps. Hey, I'm going to tell you the truth. Good for Mike Hughes. That guy was wronged. The way that they handled his injury, the way things played out in Minnesota, playing in the game that he got hurt in before 2019 playoffs, just really too bad. So good for him that he's playing and that he was starting. Oh, Xavier Watts, that's a guy we talked about a lot. Apparently tackled really. It looks like their secondary and linebackers tackled really well in this game. And that was why they had a lot of success in the run. That they didn't have crazy grades from their D-line. It was really their AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates, Divine Diablo, who's a linebacker. Divine Diablo is his name. And Xavier Watts, yeah. So they looked like they played pretty well against the run, Atlanta, in that game. KFT, not sure why the 49ers traded Mason. They don't have anybody after McCaffrey. I think it was contract related. That's just my guess, is that he was an RFA. Whoops. Dropped my mic. I'm sorry, my mouse. Dropped my mouse. He was an RFA, so maybe they thought, well, if we give him an offer, then we're going to run out of cap space and we got to use it for X, Y, and Z. I don't know. That's the best I got because the dude can absolutely play. The dude can absolutely play. I have no idea why you would move on from a player like that, other than just they got McCaffrey coming back. He's going to take 90% of the snaps, so they can't. That's probably it, is you probably have dollar figures on, all right, we got a backup running back here. Do we want to pay him? Even if it's not a ton of money, do we want to pay him this? And he was an undrafted free agent. They've developed running backs like crazy. I think that they probably looked at it as just not worth it, but that is the Vikings' benefit, that's for sure. Matt says Penix was 7th or 8th in time to throw last week. Is that time to throw in a good way or a bad way? I guess I can look at that too. Time in the pocket. Oh, you're right. Yeah, okay. You mean in a good way. Yeah, I've got, let's see. Let me sort here. 5th. I've got 5th. 2.65 seconds. Penix is going to get rid of the ball. He is going to throw the ball. This guy does not take a lot of sacks, and he's somebody that they're going to have to pay a lot of attention to. He took 0 sacks against Tampa Bay, who's got a lot of dudes up front. They're also going to have to pay attention to his ability to run, which he didn't do a lot in college, but I saw him do it in that game at the end of the game, take off. But he gets rid of the ball. And that's where it's got to be coverage in this game that's likely to make the biggest difference. Yes, you want to get into his face. I'm curious about how much he was pressured, because it's just when a guy gets rid of the ball in 2.65, it's really hard to pressure them. I mean, you got to really trick the offensive line. he was under pressure, 36% of the time, 17 of 47 dropbacks. They're just like, kid, just go throw the ball every play. Wow. But yeah, okay, so he was under pressure a little bit, but he's going to get rid of the ball. Pressuring him will make a difference. I think it's going to have to be confusion and then get him to throw an interception because he's forcing a ball into a place he didn't really want to throw it. Susan says, Knicks' game this week was rough. Yeah, that's a guy that I haven't been sold on the upside to like a lot of people have nationally. Is like in terms of Knicks being just locked in as a franchise quarterback. I thought his last season was good, but I don't know if he can be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He seems to me like he's going to have a lot of those games like last week where they win. It's ugly. It was against the bad team. They beat a lot of bad teams last year. That made a difference as well. Andrew says, great game for the interior D-line. Hargrave and Allen were free agency steals. I would not say they were steals because they were expensive. If you pay $36 million a year to two defensive tackles in total, you know what they are? When you were watching Javon Hargrave on Sunday, Monday is when you were watching, but this Sunday, when you were watching Javon Hargrave, the reason he's here is because JJ McCarthy is your quarterback. And without JJ McCarthy in that contract, Javon Hargrave ain't here. Now, you could sign a guy here or there. Maybe you get one of those free agents. You can't get all of them. So as you're looking at how strong the free agent classes have been for the last 2 years, it's all tied into the quarterback. And that's what matters in that equation where you're trying to figure out, do they stay with this guy? And I saw and the overreaction is just, it's comedy to me. I think some people take it very serious. This is why they should have got Rodgers and stuff like that. But I mean, Rodgers was not as expensive, but he's Rodgers. But even like bringing back Sam Darnold, it would have cost $41 million. That's why you do it. So they weren't steals, but you don't need to get steals. You don't need to get, we paid almost nothing for this guy and look how great he is. No, you can pay top dollar and it's great. Like these two guys are stars and they played like it in the first game. That's why you do it. Sean, to the FanDuel question of the day. I don't see Mason getting more than 20 carries. KOC still loves to throw and has huge love for Jones. And he shouldn't not have love for Jones after just the one game and a couple of carries. Mason is a difference maker, though, that I think needs to lean on and be comfortable with that. Because I just don't see very often Jordan Mason ever go backwards. That's another thing, too, is he just doesn't have a lot of negative runs. He has a lot of 3 yards that should have been 0, 5 yards that should have been 3, things like that. That makes him easier to play a lot. Chris, as Addison was missed greatly, we're going to be dangerous by season's end. Addison coming back, that was the guy who had the best chemistry with JJ McCarthy. And I think that did hurt. I really do. Look, I see a lot of people. I thought that JJ McCarthy should have played more in the preseason. But if JJ McCarthy played more in the preseason and got hurt, then you'd all say, Kevin, what were you thinking? He got hurt in the preseason before. I've never been a play guys in the preseason person ever. We reverse engineer that thing. That's how I think of it. We just, whatever we see in the first quarter of the first game, we tie into, this is why they should have played more in the preseason, or just don't bring it up. If the team has a great first quarter and they didn't play guys in the preseason, then you just don't bring it up. But if they play badly, then you say you should have played him in the preseason. To me, that'll never be a thing. And I fully understood the explanation, which was if you play McCarthy in the preseason, then you have to play the line. And look at the Bears. They got half of their players hurt. Do you want Ryan, if Ryan Kelly got hurt in the preseason, what are you doing? You need him for 17 games. I'll never buy that. I would trade a bad first quarter, which I don't think is a guarantee because of the preseason. I'll trade a bad first quarter for the next 50 years in a row to not play starters in the preseason. I just think it's not something that you should be doing. But what I do think mattered was Jordan Addison was his dude in preseason. He was throwing to Addison all the time. And then he's out and Jefferson it's a different guy. And eventually they get together and they start making plays. But that I thought that missing time in preseason did end up mattering to Justin Jefferson. Let's see. Jay, using capital letters. If you use capital letters, then I have to scream it out like a psycho, Jay. But that'll be your warning to that. What do you think was the best part of our team's play on Monday? Also, what was the worst part? Let's see. Well, the best part was probably of the actual play. So not of the, hey, JJ kept it together and that sort of thing, but the actual play was probably the late game execution of plays that got people open. We know that Kevin O'Connell is going to have plays that get people open. This is proven. It's over 3 years. We've seen it. Even Nick Mullins found open wide receivers. Like it works, right? But executing those plays, and my favorite play of the game where you just said yes to all of this was the Aaron Jones touchdown. The design of the play, picking up the stunt, the offensive line, the interior dominated on that play. And McCarthy, even though he sort of joked after the game that I wished he kind of put it a little more out in front of him, puts it right in the perfect place, turns around, catches it, touchdown. The execution of the fourth quarter plays, it wasn't, when we talk about the Bears giving them some things, the Bears didn't give them those plays. They made them, and it was excellent overall. The worst part is if you come out this week and you drop passes and run into each other and just look like you're letting the clock wind down, you're going to have problems. I also thought the low-key best part of the game was their run defense. Their run defense was terrific in that game against Chicago. Kit says, why did Jay Ward play over Theo Jackson? No, Theo played. Yeah, Theo played. I think Theo played more snaps than Jay Ward. It's just that Jay is a guy that they can put out there in dime packages specifically. So he was out there more. But Jay Ward was there. Or I'm sorry, Theo Jackson was there. The defensive backs or the safeties had a good game overall, I thought. Chris says we need another defensive back options. That's the problem. Maybe I can use AI on Google or something. AI, tell me where all the good corners are who are available right now. Then the computer will just start on fire. There's not many. Maybe Mike Hilton. I don't know that he signed anywhere yet. I know that he's visited some teams, but Fabian Morrow is kind of the best you can do for a corner around this time. He's a guy who started before. He's a veteran. And then the guys that you've developed. There isn't a lot of very good corners who you could just sign. But my approach would be to wait and see. And then there are other options. James looking at Gilmore, of course, we've talked about that a little bit of just, I don't know if Stephon Gilmore wants to play, but if he does, maybe that's a more of a midseason type of thing. I think you could let it play out for now. Let's not forget the starting corners are healthy. Shaq Griffin is on Seattle's practice squad and was elevated, but you could sign guys off other teams' practice squads. I think that they have a plan, and that button will be pushed if they need to. So, Northern Pride says, do you see us trading for a corner if they need to? Right now, the way that Jay Ward played, Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson, Harrison Smith comes back, they got DBs if they need them, and a guy they've developed for 2 years, and a former starter in Morrow who played for them last year. But if someone else were to get hurt, if Isaiah Rodgers went down or something, then you need to start having that discussion, I think. MI or ML maybe? Vikings fan? Let's see. Where's Rouse compared to School compatibility-wise? With as much as School struggled, I wanted to see Rouse go in. Well, one of the issues with football always is that when someone's struggling, that we always say, well, why are they playing a different guy? And this was the sometimes we're right, by the way. I'm not saying that you're always just wrong. That was the Brett Jones thing. They should have been playing Brett Jones more than the other guys that they were trying, because at least he could pass protect. Dalton Reisner, sometimes the backup is better, and maybe Rouse would be better. Also, maybe part of it is that Justin School's played in the league before and you're on a big stage and you need a veteran out there. You need him to understand how they're going to do a lot of things defensively. But I had some of the same thoughts that I wondered about just the younger guy being a better athlete and being able to handle, because some of the plays that School lost on were not even as technical so much as that the other guy was just too fast for him. And that's what we saw in training camp. But I don't think you need to do that just yet. Maybe, I mean, we don't see tackles get benched or anything during a game. I mean, I think, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard because what are the odds that Rouse comes in and plays like Christian Darrisaw? Like, not super high, but when it goes like that, if it consistently goes like that, you have to consider it because sometimes the other guy is ready and he's developed for a year. Just as Super Bowl Vike says, I really think the Bears will beat the Lions this week. We're going to find out about the Packers, and the Commanders are no joke. So that Bears team, I think you come away a little conflicted because I don't buy them as a real contender. I don't think they're that good, but I do think their coach is good and at offensive design. I don't think he's good at figuring out the end of the game. And didn't I make that as one of the predictions? I say so many words, I forget. I feel like I made a prediction that Ben Johnson somewhere, was it here, a radio show somewhere, that Ben Johnson would have some procedural mess up because every one of those offensive coaches, including KOC in his first year, they always have that problem. They don't realize how hard it is to call plays and manage 53 people and a coaching staff and a stadium and, the clock and all that sort of stuff. And they did it at the end of the game where they messed up with that. And also just the general demeanor of the vibe between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, quite weird. But could they go and beat Detroit? Of course they could. Like, their defensive front was nastier than I thought it was going to be. And they caused some problems for the Vikings at times. So and they're going to cause some problems for the Lions at times in this game. That's one to watch, because if the Lions lose that game, it's going to be full on panic. Ryan Wright did have one whiff on a critical punt. Yeah, I know. Give Ryan Wright his credit. Look, if a guy goes into Soldier Field and makes a 59-yard field goal, somebody had to hold that thing. And then the punt at the end was great. Let's see. Javier says, love to hear about the experience in the press room, like the anxious, quiet uneasiness building to a cheer. Now, it never builds to a cheer. That is certainly not the case. Never builds to a cheer because there is no cheering in the press box. So it never builds to a cheer. But the thing about us guys is, Javier, we've been through everything with this team. The Minneapolis Miracle. What are we at? Like the last, 700 of the last 800 one-score games. What is mostly happening is it's just quiet. It's just watching intently. And Kevin Seifert's sitting next to me and I'm saying things to him. He's saying things to me. Did you see that? Or what are they doing here? Or should they be doing this? Or, whatever. Usually that's the way we kind of work together a lot, where it's like, wait a minute, was that so-and-so in the game? Or who made that tackle? Or do we think that's a catch? Or what, things like that. We'll be asking, hey, why is it made, to each other, like just having a conversation on the press row. Like, why isn't Mason in the game more? Like, they need to put Mason in the game more. It's more like that than it is. I always get nervous during football games because it's very exciting. I like being there. I like covering it. I'm always trying to pay attention to so many details at once and think of how I'm going to frame everything and all that sort of stuff. But it's usually just kind of us sitting there having a conversation about what's going on and making sure that we've got all the details right, because we're reporting on the game. So I am going to prepare what I am writing after the game, purpleinsider.football. I'm writing during the game. I'm going to be taking notes of what I want to say in the post-game podcast, because I don't want to go into the post-game podcast and be like, did you see that? It was crazy. They won. Like, no, you don't want me to do that. You want me to break down for you what I saw, like step by step, different performances, different takeaways, what it means. So that's what I'm doing. That's what we're all doing. Kevin's writing, Alex writing. So that's kind of how it is. It's not an exciting atmosphere in a press box. It's really just kind of quiet. And here's one thing that was cool. They opened up the windows for us. One of the things that I've always just despised about the Soldier Field press box, other than, the food, they did give us some post-game pizza, which was great. But what I've always disliked about that press box is that it's quiet. The windows are closed and you don't really get a sense for the fans. And you're a little bit separated from them. You're kind of high above them and you just don't get a feeling for what's the atmosphere like. And somebody opened the window, which all these years, I didn't even know it did open. They opened the window so we could really get the feeling of the crowd. That was awesome. To get that power of the early crowd, the flyover, how loud they were, to really get that sense. I could see why JJ had some trouble early on. I definitely see why he had some issues shaking off the nerves there, because it was an intimidating crowd. Andrew says, if we don't have Cashman for a few weeks, not too worried, because Eric Wilson filled in well. And Wilson's done that so many times, that you should have confidence in it. It's not Blake Cashman, though. It does matter. You're playing Bijan Robinson. You're playing Kyle Pitts. So he's going to have to step up. Susan says, from comments and interviews this week, the noise at Soldier Field is off the chart. Yeah, no, it was. It was extremely, extremely loud at Soldier Field. I expect. So, I don't know. Some of you watch the press conferences, and I was thinking, I hope some of my audience watched this today, because Aaron Jones mentioned looking at the decibel meter in US Bank Stadium. I hope you guys remember my investigative reporting that the decibel meter is real inside the stadium, because when there was a game that no one cared about, they put it up there and it just didn't do anything and registered a really low number. And I would have loved to have seen what it was for Soldier Field. US Bank Stadium this week, I think, is going to have probably the most energy. I mean, last year against Green Bay, it was huge in terms of energy. And the life came back to that place when they beat Kirk last year. I think that meant a lot to the fans and to proving that team was for real, which, they weren't at the end of the day, but at the time. And then beating the Packers is always an enormous deal. I think that play is going to be crazy. In fact, I think JJ McCarthy needs to be ready to quiet the crowd when he actually goes out there, because when the big voice guy says, starting at quarterback, JJ McCarthy, I mean, people are going to go crazy. So they're going to have to, quiet it down. It's going to be nuts in there. It's going to be nuts. This is one I'm looking forward to very much, seeing what that crowd is like, because in US Bank Stadium, see, that's the thing. We don't have glass in US Bank Stadium. We're already indoors. So we're in the crowd and we get that sense of just like the power of that thing when it's really rocking, and it's something. Football. Alex, to the FanDuel question of the day, I want Mason going for 60% of the snaps. I think that's okay, except I also want Jones catching the ball, and that's why I think closer to 50-50 is probably right. Peter, do we think Darisaw plays in game 2? I think there's a better chance that he does. I would not have wanted him on that field. Some of the tape does not lie when it comes to guys sliding around out there. It was pretty brutal. I would not have wanted that. This week, I think there's a decent chance of the fact that he was a full participant again today. But it's hard to figure, because last year they played it very slow with TJ Hawkinson. It was the right thing to do. They need that guy back there. It's just, you don't want to press too much. You'd rather survive with a left tackle who's struggling versus somebody re-injuring themselves who is a superstar of your team. Stitch, are you able to see the replay broadcast in the press box? Yes. Now, some angles are better than others. In Chicago, kind of like having to lean back and look up there. US Bank Stadium, I've got a great TV kind of right in front of me, especially when we do our newsletter chat. If you want to get in, purpleinsider.football, and then you get the app and you do the chat with me during the game. I've substituted that for Twitter, because Twitter is just brutal. And so I thought it's probably better if I have people who are not as insane and belong to the newsletter. So that's, it's a fun thing to consider. But anyway, so I can watch the broadcast and make sure that I don't spoil what's going to happen. But also that's a great way to, hey, did I just see what I thought I just saw? When something happens, how did it happen? I can quickly look up and see on the broadcast a second look at it. Without that, it would be pretty tricky to cover games. It would be a lot harder. Those guys who did it in the pre-TV eras of the 70s or whatever, they must have had to have really good eyes, because you can't watch 11 people on both sides of the ball all at once. So what I usually try to do on each play is, are you sure you're not the stadium announcer? You thought that was that good? Was that accurate? No, starting a quarterback. I don't remember how I did it now. No, there's no glass in front of us where we're at in the press box. Like we're kind of in the stands. We're jammed in the middle. What was I talking about before? Oh, just now I forget. You distracted me. Anyway, great stuff. I think that it is now a good time to give you my conversation with Robert Mays of The Athletic. He and I had a chance to chat, and at one point, you'll have to forgive me, I choked on some Diet Dr. Pepper, and I recovered in a second, but I wanted to edit that out. Didn't have time today. Busy day out at TCO Performance Center, so forgive me for that, but it's a really good discussion. Robert's a great friend. He has been a huge supporter of Purple Insider for a very long time. I think, gosh, when did I meet Robert for the first time? Like 2017, 2018. So it's been really cool to see the podcast that he's built over at the Athletic Football Show. Hopefully you guys get a chance to listen to that as well. And we played a fun game here. And just as a precursor to this, I intentionally tried to go over the top with the opinions to just see where Robert stood on a lot of different things. The NFC North after 1 week, JJ McCarthy, Kevin O'Connell, all that stuff. So here is my conversation with the great Robert Mays. All right, we welcome into the show from the Athletic Football Show, one of my go-to podcasts, and a good friend, Robert Mays. I got a game for you, Robert. I try to up my game every time you come on. I feel like I really got to bring it. So here's the game. The game is, I'm going to give you some opinions from week one, a lot from the NFC North, and I want you to either say, you nailed it, dog, or I don't know, man. Those are your two options for every one of these opinions, okay? You nailed it, dog, or I don't know, man. And those are the only two ways you can answer, and then obviously we'll talk about why, okay?
All right, I'm in. Let's do it.
Okay. Let me start off with this. I don't think we know a whole lot about the NFC North yet, despite the results maybe telling us we do, except for I don't think I can take the Chicago Bears that seriously. Are you in, yeah, dog, or I don't know, man?
I don't know, man. It's week one with a new coaching staff. It's week one, period. I think that I still have a kernel of hope about taking the Bears seriously, just because I've seen what Ben Johnson has been able to do over multiple years in Detroit. And I also think that the defense played pretty darn good for like 3/4 of that game without your two best defensive backs, arguably. So I still have like a small candle lit for this team being at least competent over the course of the year. But I feel like some of the early returns, especially on the offense, are about as worrying as they can be. But I'm never going to set anything in stone after 1 week. That's what I would say.
Okay, I think that is very fair, especially the part about, playing without your corners, although we all had a pick six for Nahshon Wright. It had to be the Nahshon Wright revenge game against the Vikings. What I saw watching back that game was a lot of receivers that were there. And I guess you could look at that as one of two ways. Caleb Williams couldn't hit them, which is bad, but also they were open, which is good. That Ben Johnson stuff, I think, was working. But then they really couldn't play the run off of it with DeAndre Swift, which, a lot of people wondered, why aren't you looking for better running back help? It's not so much that I think the Bears can't be a serious football team. I think that they can. I think they could be someone where anybody who goes to play them is not just going, but I just don't know if they could play with the big boys. I mean, the amount of talent on the field for the Packers and the Lions and the Vikings, you saw it like top to bottom, the defense, the defensive line for the Vikings. I just think they're on another level talent-wise from Chicago.
I guess I agree with that. I mean, I feel like you probably should agree with that, because I think that the three teams that you just mentioned, when it comes to 21 of the 22 starters, they're trying to win the Super Bowl this year. Like all three of those teams. I mean, JJ McCarthy was really the only big question. If you look at the entire rest of the Vikings roster, this is a Super Bowl ready roster. I don't think I ever would have thought that about the Bears. Like, on our show, we do division previews. We talk about every single team. And at the end of every single preview, we say, what does success look like for X team in 2025? For the Bears, success to me was finishes a top half of the league offense. So the fact that they're still a little bit of a ways away from all of the other teams in the NFC North, I think that's okay. I think some of that is a talent gap, but I think a lot of that is just where you are in the process. This is year 4 of Dan Campbell. This is year 7 of Matt LaFleur. This is year 4 of Kevin O'Connell. Like, I just think it's a slightly different trajectory and a slightly different timeline for all those teams. I don't necessarily think the talent is not the first thing I would point out. I think it's just where you are on the curve as an organization. The Bears are just in a different spot than all the 3 of those other teams in the NFC North.
So part 1 of that opinion for you to react to is, hey, I'm not taking the Bears seriously in contention with the other teams, but also implying that week 1's results between the Packers and Lions don't give us all the answers, or the Vikings pulling off that crazy win with JJ McCarthy looking great in the fourth quarter doesn't tell us everything about what he's going to be either. I think there was a natural reaction, if you look at the markets as well, when the Packers get Micah Parsons, to make them Super Bowl favorites in the NFC, and then they came out and looked like it. So when those two things match up, and all of the problems that the Lions were purported to have, they did have, I think so much of it matched up with what we thought it was going to be that it was like, this is the obvious truth. I don't know if I want to go that far just yet with the Packers and the Lions.
I'm like willing to go there a little bit with the Packers specifically, just because I believed this heading in. Like, I picked them to win the division. I picked them to win the NFC. I just felt like this version of the Packers was possible. Like the version that we saw on Sunday, us seeing that for 17 games, I do think that was potentially on the table with where this team was. And that was in part just because I really liked the way that their defense was coached last season. I felt like Jeff Hafley did an excellent job in year 1 as their defensive coordinator, with some holes personnel-wise, holes you didn't really plan for coming into the season, which Jair Alexander's supposed to be having, like him as a definitive starting corner for you. And so them going out and getting Micah Parsons, but also just them having one more offseason to understand who they were, I thought that unit could be pretty good heading into this year. And I have a ton of faith in the Packers offense. Like, I've had a ton of faith in the Packers offense since Matt LaFleur got there. So I'm willing to believe in what we saw from the Packers on Sunday is like maybe indicative of what we could get from them all year, because I came in believing they could be that. And I'll say this, like, I don't think it's going to necessarily be a huge problem for the Lions all season, but similar to the Bears, where it's like, you can't make definitive statements after week 1. It looked about as bad as it could look, given all of the questions that you had coming into the year. So I don't think it's necessarily we're going to see those versions of those teams for 17 weeks. But I do think that it's an early initial signal to pay attention to based on what some of our concerns for the Lions and optimism for the Packers looked like heading into the year.
So I tend to agree with you on this, because with the Lions, there is no, oh, you know what you guys should do is just get Frank Ragnow back. Like, just call him up. Hey, Frankie, why don't you come back and just be like the best center in the league? And the other part of it too is Ben Johnson is not coming back either. And when you build an offense over 4 years with 2 dudes, quarterback and head coach, like, if you took Andy Reid away from Mahomes, it would be different. If you took McVay away from Matthew Stafford over several years, it would be different for that quarterback. And how long is that going to take to adjust? And then even can it adjust back to the point where it was before? Because Jared Goff just didn't look comfortable with anything he was doing. And I don't think that was all because of the pressure. We know Goff and his numbers dropped severely under pressure and when he sped up. But he's really good at executing even against great defenses a lot of times. he just didn't look like he had places to go with that football. I don't know if I've ever seen a running back have 10 catches for 31 yards before. That is a very strange. That's like when you play on all Madden and you have no other answers because the computer is just too hard. So I think that Detroit's problems are very real and very hard to solve. And I think Green Bay's talents with Parsons there's a trickle down effect. And when you see Lucas Van Ness rush up the middle and you're like, that's probably where he should have been, but now he doesn't have to play a little out of position in an edge spot because they have a guy who's there. There's a trickle down effect. And I agree with you on LaFleur. I think he's one of the better offensive minds. I think what it comes down to there is just how consistent Jordan Love can be, because it has been a roller coaster for him in his first 2 years.
There's no doubt about that. I think the consistency of their passing game is going to be the thing I pay the most attention to. And obviously they've had stretches where it's been really, really good. Last year, if you look at the third down numbers specifically and just some of their struggles in that situation then against man coverage, that was actually the outlier. Like Jordan Love's first year, they were actually much better down to down than they were in 2024. And whether that's him being a little bit banged up, I think there are a lot of things that contributed to that. But I do think that Jordan Love, he's played 32 games in the NFL. Like this idea that Jordan Love is some fully formed product after those 2 years, like I'm very open to the idea that we could see the best version of Jordan Love that we have this season. And if we do that, combined with everything else the Packers have, I feel like there is a gear to this team that makes them, if not the best team in the NFC, then certainly one of them.
Which is funny because the other side of that opinion might be, hey, Jordan Love's like 27 years old and we still act like he is this unknown type of thing. So when do we know about a quarterback is sort of a fundamental thing. And I have an easy answer for that. It's after 1/4 quarter. That's how you know. So let me get to my second opinion for now. I even forget how I frame this. Yeah, dog, or I don't know, man, are the two ways. So here's an opinion for you. JJ McCarthy showed you in the fourth quarter everything that he can be, and all he needed was a little comfort, and all he needed was his coach to maybe take the shackles off, stop trying to play around with short passes, and just say, let it rip, JJ McCarthy, and also use your athleticism. Go get him, kid. And now that happened, off the Minnesota Vikings go with their young franchise quarterback. So I think, in this opinion, we saw everything we needed to see from JJ McCarthy to know what he's going to be going forward here.
I don't know, man. It's 1/4 of a week 1 game. He made 4 throws. I think they were an impressive 4 throws. I think the thing I would be most encouraged by the fourth quarter for the Vikings is this was the vision of what the offense overall was supposed to be. And when I say that, I mean being able to run the ball on your terms in the most important moments of the game. For the first 3 quarters, JJ McCarthy struggled, but the run game also struggled. Like they just couldn't get anything going on the ground. And Kevin O'Connell tapped into like one concept that he went back to a couple different times for chunk plays. He clearly saw something. And on one of those plays, you have Ryan Kelly just winning a one-on-one against Gervon Dexter as like a shade to the play side where like, God bless Garrett Bradbury, he's not doing that. And so you have the backs now. You're supposed to have the pieces up front now. So that part of the vision comes together. And then obviously you have KOC like dialing stuff up in that fourth quarter, like that little, I don't know what you would call it, like little like stutter wheel go to Aaron Jones. It's just like a perfect play call in the high red zone. And I also think that I was a little surprised they didn't try to get JJ on the move a little bit more earlier in the game. I don't know if some of that is the Bears playing more man coverage than the Vikings might have anticipated, but you think about those 2 big completions to Jefferson, the one where he goes in motion, runs like the deep out to the left side, and then obviously on the touchdown, I feel like it was just a little bit more dynamic, some of the things that they were doing later in the game, and I put a lot of that on the play caller who is capable of that kind of stuff. So I think my optimism for the Vikings offense coming out of that is more about the overall formula than it is the quarterback convincing me that he is something after throwing 3 or 4 passes following a pretty rough first 3 quarters of his career.
I should mention that if it hasn't become obvious, the opinions are exaggerated for the sake of the show and for the sake of discussion, because, of course, I don't think that we saw every single thing we need to see. But I do think that we learned a lot about JJ McCarthy and how he handles that moment. I also think we learned a lot about what throws are going to work for him. And if you are rolling out with JJ McCarthy a quick pass game where he's got to just throw short to Jefferson, throw short to Hawkinson, I just don't think that matches up with the head coach's philosophy and his offense. And I don't think that Kevin O'Connell should tie one hand behind the back to try to protect the young quarterback. Like, you might have to let him throw some pick sixes in the name of getting downfield passing to Justin Jefferson. I mean, we saw Jefferson is the best, and we all know it. But running a 4-yard route, apparently not his thing. Like, getting to 3 yards and getting short. And I was like, well, that was what they wanted maybe Rondale Moore for, to come into this offense when they signed him and he got hurt. That's just not going to be who they are. So I think what McCarthy showed, of course, is the poise and the ability to not let the moment be too big for him, to lead his team. All that stuff is extremely relevant and important, and a baller nature to go run in a touchdown, to rip that pass to Jefferson over the middle with a lot of confidence. Like, after the game he was having, to throw that at that point is pretty darn impressive. But I also think that O'Connell learned, one, to get Jordan Mason in the freaking game earlier, and then two, run your offense. Don't try to run a Mickey Mouse version of it or a protect JJ McCarthy. Do what you do.
I feel like if you're going to protect him, the play that comes to mind for me, which is a good example of this, is the screen they threw to Justin. And I think it was, I can't remember which drive it was on, but it was later in the game. I think it was in the fourth quarter. Like, that's a scheme touch that makes sense to me, where you're not throwing him like there was a third down, it was a 3rd and 4, where they threw him like a 3-yard route. He was stopped short of the sticks. That I don't need anything of. But if you're trying to get him scheme touches with a little bit of runway as a way to kind of give some layups to your young quarterback, that's something that I can support. So, because I do think that there needs to be the right blend of this stuff. Asking him to rip those intermediate throws that he is more than capable of doing, that should be part of this. But if you can sprinkle in a few more screens, things of that nature, to get your best players just quick touches with the ball in their hands with yak opportunities, I feel like that also should be part of this. I think there's a balance to be found there.
Yeah, I wrote about this going into the game, and it's one of those, all about this, excuse me, that you write an article about a player's. Sorry, let me, hold on. I will edit that out. Boy, the takes, they're just too spicy. Okay. Well, you know how this goes, Robert, when you write an article before a game and you're like, please do the thing that I wrote about you doing. And so I wrote a big piece about the screen game and how much it can help JJ McCarthy get on track, keep things going. And of course, they threw 3 screens in that game. Now, one was kind of a run. It was counted as a run, but it was more of a screen to Justin Jefferson. But I think that those parts of it, staying ahead of the sticks a little with the run game, is going to be important for them. Getting the screens is going to be important for them, and then push the right buttons. And I just feel like there's going to have to be some Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan style, run the boots, man. Run Jordan Mason. Like, that drive really looked like Kyle Shanahan had called it. Handoff, big gain, play action roll to the left, hit Jefferson, and then your quarterback makes one play and you get a touchdown. But I don't want to see it like paired so far down to try to protect him.
I totally agree with that. And the comparison that I've made, and when it comes to the style of this offense, it's actually the Rams offense early in the Sean McVay tenure, before Kevin O'Connell even got there, and before Wes Phillips even got there. I think Wes got there in like 2019, maybe. I don't know where my timeline is, but I think that's right. It was after those first couple years when they really built the foundation of who they were. But if you go back and you watch those 2017, 2018 Rams teams, there is a lot of, it's a matter of the run game, the play action game, and the screen game, and to an extent the play being tied in together. And they were not asking Jared Goff to do a ton. Like, what they were asking him to do in that offense is, we want you to rip intermediate, often in breaking throws off play action. And I feel like that is where JJ McCarthy can really be successful. And so that being the foundation of it. And it's funny because I think if you talk to Kevin or Wes, they still do believe in like the core tenets and principles of that McVay offense, which goes back to the ideas that Gary Kubiak trotted out there, which is, we want the run and the pass to be married together. That didn't exist in Minnesota for a couple of years simply because they couldn't run the ball. But I think part of why you go out and you get those guys is that you want to be able to run the ball a little bit more efficiently. And that allows you to kind of tie those things together in a way that you couldn't over the last couple of years. And so I think that's the vision that they're chasing, even if we haven't necessarily seen that version of the Kevin O'Connell offense since he got to Minnesota.
I love that you bring that up because it's the exact comparison that I made of Jared Goff early, where it was keep the train on the tracks. Todd Gurley was fantastic then, especially with the screen and swing pass game, and using Aaron Jones out of the backfield is something that don't hesitate to keep doing that as much as you want to do it and play to the strengths of his throws, which I think that they did in the second half of that game. Okay, next opinion for you. If you were to have an all head coach draft, and this is a what's the fantasy league when you keep the guys for a dynasty. So this is a dynasty. This is not win one Super Bowl tomorrow. This is dynasty draft. Kevin O'Connell, number 1 overall pick.
I don't know, man.
I need a dog out of you somewhere here.
If you had said he would go in the top 5, I think that's kind of undeniable. I still feel like McVay is just a different sort of guy. And like what McVay has been able to do over the last several years is just on a kind of a different level. But Kevin, I think, creeps up and up and up with each passing year. And that's for a bunch of different reasons. Obviously, like what he's able to draw up and just how dynamic that offense always feels is part of it. But I feel like he really is the ideal of what you want in a modern head coach. And just in terms of the forward-facing stuff, how he carries himself, clearly like the buy-in he has from the locker room, the culture that he's created there. I think just on a bunch of different levels, he checks all of those boxes. I just think for me, considering the success that some of those other guys have had, and it's not as if McVay's like 65 years old, right? Like if he wants to keep coaching, you could have him for another 30 years. And so I still feel like even without doing my own little big board, Sean would probably be number 1, but I think Kevin is kind of firmly in the top 5 at this point, even if he has not necessarily had some of the postseason success that other people you'd throw into that mix have had so far.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, McVay, I think, is the number 1 overall pick in this sort of draft. And I wouldn't put Matt LaFleur too far behind. I think that there's a lot of these guys who are sort of rooted in the same ideas, and these ideas work. Now, we all agree that Kevin O'Connell can't get out-coached in playoff games and be considered the best coach in the entire NFL. But I think that what is kind of left behind in that discussion even, and not to apologize. He got outcoached by McVay. He got outcoached by Brian Dable, which was pretty bad in that Giants game.
I think Ed Donatell got outcoached by Brian Dable. I think that's probably how I would spin that one.
Someone had the chance to fire Ed Donatell halfway through that season where we knew that defense wasn't working. So he's responsible for that. But I think that setting the bar when you win 13 or 14 games in seasons where your team is not really ready to win that many games, it makes people sort of look at it like, well, you won 14 games and you can't even win in the playoffs. But it's like, that was probably a 10-win football team that won 14 games. And in 2022, that's probably an 8-win football team that won 13 games. And a lot of that was, crazy stuff at the end. But I think that he has sort of raised the bar beyond a place he's been able to reach it, which ties into, I think now he's got the tools over the next 2 years to be able to reach that bar.
I totally agree with that. And the
Say
way that
yeah, dog. Give me a yeah, dog.
Yeah,
I got
yeah,
no
dog.
There you go.
Yeah, dog. I'm in on that.
I needed one.
I have always said in like the multi-year kind of vision for the Vikings, why I was a supporter of them allowing JJ to play this year is that to me, 2026 always felt like the year for the Vikings. I think that's the year that you have circled. And, there's some dicey elements to that. Like your Jonathan Allen will be a year older. The Javon Hargrave will be a year older. Again, this is already a team that is invested in some third contract players. And so the margins on that are pretty slim. But I always felt like that was the year where it's like, all right, that's when we're going to be the team that can really make a run at this thing. And so that's why getting JJ McCarthy the experience this year was so important, because you didn't want to go into that 2026 year having no information about this guy. And so over the next 2 years, I think that we're going to find out a lot about Kevin O'Connell, about the core of this group that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has built, and about JJ McCarthy. So I'm with you. I think that these next 2 seasons we're going to figure out whether Kevin O'Connell can clear that bar that he consistently has kind of made higher for himself.
By what week do you think that we should feel like we have conclusions on how good JJ McCarthy is for how far he could take the team?
Week 8 of next year. I think with quarterbacks specifically, it takes a long time to fully understand what they're capable of. And like you said earlier, like Jordan Love's going to be 27. Like, shouldn't we know? Not really. Like Lamar Jackson was a different player last year than he had ever been at any point in his career. Josh Allen has been a different player in his age 28 season than he was earlier in his career. Like, this is a position specifically. And I think Sam Darnold is a great example of this. Like, when you get to, there's a convergence to me with quarterbacks where when you get to like 27, 28, 29, the physical tools have not started to erode and the mental side of the game has sharpened to the point where you really understand what you're looking at. And that's when you're truly entering your prime at the position. So I don't think we'll really understand like what JJ McCarthy is until a long time from now. I think you'll get a sense of like what you'll be capable of in the short term, hopefully by the end of this season. But Jordan Love looked like he was unplayable for stretches of that first year as a starter, and then he looked great in the back half of the year. So I'm always pushing toward a more conservative timeline when it comes to us getting answers on these guys at that position specifically.
Yeah, and of course it's ironic, right? The best versions of these quarterbacks happen when they're expensive and not when they're on their rookie contract. If it matches up like a Jalen Hurts the first time you go to the Super Bowl, I don't know. Maybe we have seen the best version of Brock Purdy, but they go to the Super Bowl. And with JJ McCarthy, I think what it comes down to for me for this year and knowing what he's going to be is what does it look like when he hits a hellacious stretch in the middle of the season where you've got the Eagles and the Lions and the Chargers and you're just getting hit each week. There's multiple road games against tough teams. If they get through that and he plays well through that stretch, even if they go one game above 500 in their toughest 5-game stretch, I'm going to think, I don't know, if they go into the playoffs, they could beat just about anyone because he doesn't have to be the age 27, fully formed adult man, JJ McCarthy, to win games with this team.
I think that's also part of this is that they've been able to build something around him that doesn't force him to be that sort of player, right? Like that's the entire point of having a quarterback on a rookie contract is that you can create something for him that gets him from the fledgling version of himself to the fully formed version of himself. And that's the entire argument about the Vikings is that they were able to build this thing in part because they went with the cheap quarterback. And so I think with him this year, it's do not turn the ball over, right? Like just make sure you're not turning the ball over. And those intermediate throws that we're going to ask you to make, notably off play action, are you able to consistently make the throws that we are providing to you? If he's able to do both of those things and the Vikings are able to make good on all the other promises they've made about the offense, we can run the ball well. We have extreme receiver talent. We have one of the best play callers in the league. I think that version of JJ McCarthy is enough for this to be a playoff team in 2025. And I think that is a perfectly reasonable set of ambitions to have if you're the Vikings or you're a Vikings fan.
Yeah, dog. That's right. I totally agree. Let me give you a few dog or nah mans before we go. Great stuff as always. Okay, so the Vikings are playing the Atlanta Falcons. Here's my take on the Atlanta Falcons. I want to watch the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know I want to see it.
Yeah, dog. With one caveat, I did not like what I saw from them in week 1. Like we talked about it on our show. I think the Falcons threw like 36% of their pass attempts to the sticks in week 1 against the Bucs. That is not what I want to see out of the Atlanta Falcons. You have got a quarterback that can throw the ball through like a drywall wall in front of him. Like he has one of the craziest arms I've ever seen on an NFL player. It's pretty erratic at times, but the phrase arm talent was created in part because of people like Michael Penix. And so watching that version of the Falcons on Sunday where they could not run the ball efficiently, which was crazy considering they were the most efficient running team in the league last year, and you're defanging this guy who has a howitzer. I do want to watch the Falcons over the course of the year, but the first glimpse that I got of them, I will say I was a little bit disappointed just stylistically in what they were trying to do against the Bucs.
So I was thinking more big picture that I think every Falcons game this year will end on someone kicking a field goal to try to win the game or tie the game. Like I just, they are just talented enough, just flawed enough to be that team that goes, I don't know, 9-8, but every single game is crazy. It comes down to the last minute and you just don't know what's going to happen. I think that the Vikings on FanDuel, they're favored by 4.5. I think they deserve to be favored in this game against the Falcons. But I also foresee madness in this contest.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there are two young quarterbacks who could potentially provide that madness for you. And I'll say this. The Falcons defense, I was very curious what it was going to be under Jeff Ulbrich. He was the defensive coordinator with the Jets over the last couple of years. He comes to Atlanta this year, and both him and Robert Saleh, I feel like we've kind of seen like the next subtle evolution with that defensive system. If you go look at what the Falcons were doing on defense last week against the Bucs, there's some wild stuff in there. And so I think that that part of it is going to be entertaining. I do think the offense over the course of the season will be entertaining, but I'm with you in that there are enough gaps in the talent on that team where it might be entertaining, but it also might be soul crushing if you're a Falcons fan, the exact same way that it was on Sunday.
Okay, last one. So coming out of week 1, you would probably say in the AFC, and we're doing a yeah dog. Here's my actual dog. There he is. This is Buddy, Robert. This is my.
I can't see him. He's too low.
Oh, that's right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, you could see him on the. I think the audience can see him. Anyway, I'll point the camera at him for you in a second so you can see him. But anyway, so coming out of week 1, I think you would say in the AFC, the teams that have the best chance to win the Super Bowl are the Bills, Ravens, and Chargers. Is that a yeah dog, or are you still throwing KC in there? You throwing anybody else?
I don't know, man. It's week 1. I want to see a little bit more from the Chargers. I will say that I've always been a Justin Herbert believer. I've been an ardent Justin Herbert believer. I've crowed from the mountaintops for a very long time that if you watch the games, Justin Herbert is a very good NFL quarterback. And it was very funny to watch that happen on Friday, where it was an island game where he played well. And so suddenly everyone was like, oh man, like, why don't we always get this from Justin Herbert? It's like he was like this for 17 regular season games last year with plantar fasciitis and a sprained ankle and then played like garbage in the playoffs. Just because you weren't watching the 305 Raiders Chargers game from last year does not mean that this was not Justin Herbert last season. That comes with a caveat about my concerns about the Chiefs on two fronts. One, no Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy for that game, which I do think is at least worth pointing out. I don't think that excuses everything we saw from the Chiefs offense, but I do think it's important to throw out there. And then the other part of it is that I am really concerned about the Chiefs defense, because the Chargers, I still want to see what that group looks like on offense against a better pass rush, because even though Joe Alt is going to be really good, you still have 4 of the other 5 component parts that were essentially, and Mekhi Becton will throw half of it. We have 3.5 of the component parts of what have been really disappointing offensive lines for the Chargers over the last couple of years. And I want to see them play against the team that has actual pass rushers, because the Chiefs had one of the worst pass rushes in the league last season, and it did not look any better last week against the Chargers. And I still feel like the Chiefs secondary, there are a lot of like young, unproven players there. Like, we'll see what Jaden Hicks is over the course of the year, stepping in there for Justin Reed. But I feel like the youth is going to show on that side. And if the pass rush doesn't come along, this could go from being a good Chiefs defense when they were winning Super Bowls to a bad Chiefs defense. And so it's always interesting with week 1, because you could be looking into a funhouse mirror with these teams. We have absolutely no idea. And so with the Chargers specifically, I'm just going to be in wait and see mode for a tiny bit longer, because I don't know what to make of the Chiefs defense.
I think that's very fair, because when we got to the playoffs last year, they weren't the only team. There was a number of teams, including the Minnesota Vikings, whose offensive lines they painted over in the regular season. And then when they got to the playoffs, they were very much unearthed as what they really were. Robert Mays, the Athletic Football Show, one of the best podcasts in the entire universe. That is true. When people ask, like, what football podcast to listen to, yours is one of the top of mind for me. So, highly recommend. You're adding to the team. You're adding new camera angles for your YouTube podcast. You got a lot going on at the Athletic Football Show, Robert. Thank you very much for taking the time to get together. I'll give this 2 yeah dogs.
I appreciate it. It's always good to chat with you, and thank you for throwing that out there. It's very kind of you to say that, and it means a lot. And yeah, if you're looking for a national NFL podcast, we've been doing this one for a while, but it looks a little sleeker this year. So if it's something where you're seeking out something on YouTube or you want more national discussion about the league, we would love if you guys came and checked it out.
All right. There you go. Robert Mays, thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you.